Chapter 131. Bro, do you have some enmity with this person? If you want to kill him, just do it. There's no need to make things so complicated. The big man didn't even need to think about it. After all, someone who had only cultivated for a few days facing someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation would definitely die, so he didn't believe that Gania could survive. As such, when he heard Zhao Fu say that he would help Gania find someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation, he was incredibly shocked. After all, this was equivalent to killing someone. Zhao Fu smiled and didn't reply. Instead, he looked at Gania and asked, "Are you confident?" Gania lowered his head and cupped his hands as he replied resolutely, "Yes, young lord." Because it was inconvenient to call Zhao Fu your majesty outside, Zhao Fu had everyone call him young lord. This was quite common, and almost everyone in the village called him that, so it didn't attract too much attention. When he heard this, Zhao Fu turned to the big man and said, "Find someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation or above." Seeing that Zhao Fu was so insistent, the big man had no choice but to look at the list and say, "There's a match soon, and the opponent is someone at the peak of stage 0 to 3. He's called Evil Tyrant. Bro, are you sure? If you're sure, I'll make the arrangements. Don't blame me if anything happens." The big man continuously reminded Zhao Fu. After all, he had received a lot of money from Zhao Fu, which was why he was so polite. Normally, he wouldn't be like this, as his life and death had nothing to do with him. When Zhao Fu heard the big man's words, he understood and nodded. He and Gania went to a place that had been specially prepared for the duel and waited. Time gradually passed, and more people came to the arena. When the duel was about to start, the arena was filled with people just like before. At that moment, a person walked up to a high platform in the arena and shouted, "Good morning, everyone. I am the host of the Lone Wolf Arena, and I would like to introduce the 2 duels to everyone. One of them is a rather famous evil tyrant in our arena. He has a cultivation at the peak of stage 0 to 3, and I'm sure that everyone is familiar with him. Last time, he used his axe to split a person with a cultivation of around stage 0 to 4.5. After the host finished speaking, a fierce-looking man carrying a large axe walked out from the side. When he walked out, countless spectators excitedly shouted his name. It seemed that this tyrant was quite famous. Hearing these excited shouts, a trace of a smile appeared on Tyrant's face. He quite enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention, and he simply waved his hand as a response. Then, he walked over to the host. At that moment, the host once again shouted, "Next, I'll introduce Evil Tyrant's opponent. He's someone who has only cultivated for a few days and hasn't even reached stage 1 to 1, but he has already joined the arena to practice his sword." Immediately after, Gania, who was wearing a black cloak, walked out from the side. However, when Gania walked out, the crowd booed. Many people in the audience cursed him. "Are you kidding me? We're here to watch a fight, not to watch a massacre. Letting a person who has only cultivated for a few days go up? Yeah, that's not interesting at all. Isn't that the same as throwing your life away? There's no excitement at all. Let's end this quickly and start the next round." Hearing the cheers from the crowd, the host felt quite awkward. However, Gania's expression did not change at all, and he walked over to the host's side. Following this, the host started to introduce the odds. The odds for betting on Evil Tyrant to win were less than 1%, while the odds for betting on Gania were 30%. It was evident that no one believed that Gania would win. Everyone felt that Evil Tyrant would definitely win. So after the host finished his introduction, almost everyone bet on Evil Tyrant to win. After all, this was a free win. Seeing this, Evil Tyrant felt quite pleased, and he looked at Gania and harumphed. However, Gania ignored this provocation and remained expressionless. Seeing this lopsided scene, Zhao Fu couldn't help but lightly laugh. Following this, Zhao Fu took out 1,000 gold coins and bet on Gania. Zhao Fu was quite confident in Gania. If it wasn't for the fact that the betting odds were so high that the owner could only buy 1,000 gold coins, Zhao Fu would have bet all of his money on Gania. Following this, everyone placed their bets, while Evil Tyrant and Gania walked into the 100-meter wide cage from the other side. The host loudly announced, The duel officially begins. At this moment, countless spectators yelled, "Evil tyrant! Hurry up and kill him. Let's end this quickly so we can have the next round. We'll definitely win this time, and we'll bet on you again next time." Hearing the cheers, Evil Tyrant started to laugh. He was incredibly confident in this person who had only cultivated for a few days, and he yelled, "Hey boy, kneel down and kowtow 3 times. If you kneel down and kowtow to me 3 times right now, I might take your life again later." Gunia didn't reply to Evil Tyrant's words, and he stood there with his sword outstretched. He didn't even bother taking off his cloak. A cloak could hide one's appearance and body, but it would still hinder one's movements, especially during a fight. Not only did this cause Evil Tyrant to laugh at him, but it also caused everyone else to laugh at him. This person who had only cultivated for a few days was simply seeking death. Seeing this, the host said to the big man who had been talking to Zhao Fu, "Bro, are you kidding me? You're asking a person who has only cultivated for a few days to fight Evil Tyrant." The big man looked incredibly innocent as he said, "I didn't want to, but this person said that he wanted to fight someone with stage 0 to 3 cultivation or above." "Really?" The host felt quite surprised and looked at Gunia. Because of the cloak, he couldn't see anything, so he didn't believe that someone who had only cultivated for a few days would be able to defeat Evil Tyrant. Facing Evil Tyrant's mockery, Gunia still didn't react. He held his sword and stood there, not moving at all, as if he was a block of wood. Seeing that Gunia didn't react at all, Evil Tyrant felt quite displeased, and he coldly harumphed, "Since you're seeking death, don't blame me." Evil Tyrant raised his large axe and circulated his cultivation power as he rushed at Gunia. It could be said that Evil Tyrant was quite powerful, and he gave off a powerful aura like a massive beast. Soon, Evil Tyrant reached Gunia. The spectators had only come to watch a bloody slaughter, and seeing Evil Tyrant swing his axe at Gunia, they all felt that Gunia was dead for sure. As such, they all screamed in excitement. Evil Tyrant also felt that Gunia was dead for sure, and he savagely grinned as he swung his axe down. However, at that moment, Gunia slowly raised his head and looked at Evil Tyrant. His icy gaze caused Evil Tyrant's body to freeze, but in that instant, Gunia swung his sword. Shing! A clear sword hum sounded out as an arc of sword light flashed. This sword strike was incredibly fast, and most people couldn't even see it clearly. Pooh! Evil Tyrant's body froze, and a look of shock appeared on his face as a large amount of blood spurted out of his neck, forming a bloody mist. Gunia, who was holding his sword and wearing his black cloak, gave off a terrifying aura. The raucous scene instantly fell silent. Chapter 132. Bang! A muffled explosion sounded out as Evil Tyrant's body went limp, and he half-knelt before powerlessly collapsing to the ground. Blood slowly flowed out, and Evil Tyrant died with a look of disbelief on his face. He had lost to someone who had only cultivated for a few days. All of the spectators looked incredibly shocked. Just then, Gunia had raised his hand, and an arc of sword light had flashed out, ending everything so easily and so quickly. Is this really something that someone who has only cultivated for a few days can do? The spectators couldn't quite believe it, because the feeling that Gunia gave off was that he was incredibly powerful, and it definitely wasn't something that a noob could do. However, some of the sharp-eyed spectators could tell that Gunia had indeed only cultivated for a few days. Just from the sword light that he had released, they could tell that his power came from his sword skills, which had almost reached the pinnacle. He was just a bit away from becoming a grandmaster, which was enough for him to establish his own sect. Indeed, Gunia's power came from his sword skills. Back then, Gunia had been a famous swordsman, and he had pursued the way of the sword his entire life. All of his experiences had been passed down from generation to generation. What powerful sword skills! The host, who had been in disbelief, couldn't help but exclaim. The big man's eyes widened as he looked at Gunia, feeling quite surprised. He had never thought that Gunia would be so powerful, and he had thought that Gunia was dead for sure. Hearing the host's words, he couldn't help but nod. All of the spectators' attitudes changed. Because they were all quite blind, they hadn't realized how powerful Gania was. After a moment of silence, the spectators excitedly yelled out Gania's name. Sword training, sword training, sword training. The scene was quite lively, and Zhao Fu stood by the side with his hands behind his back. His gaze fell on Gania's body, and he gave a trace of smile. He was not surprised that Gania had been able to kill Evil Tyrant with a single strike, as this was completely within Zhao Fu's expectations. At that moment, the host walked up to the stage and shouted, as everyone can see, "The winner! Sword training!" What happened next caused everyone to feel quite bitter. Almost everyone had bet on Evil Tyrant, and now that Gania had won, they had lost their bets. Everyone had lost a lot of money. On the other hand, Zhao Fu had made a massive profit. Because the payout was 30-1, Zhao Fu's 1,000 gold coins was 30,000 gold coins. Seeing the competition end so quickly, the big man and the host discussed among themselves. Following this, the big man ran to Zhao Fu's side and passionately said, "Brother, how about having your subordinates fight a few more rounds?" Hearing this, Zhao Fu thought about it and realized that he hadn't even done anything to Gania. So he nodded and said, "Find 5 people with stage 0 to 4 cultivation or above to attack together." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, the big man felt a bit surprised, but he understood. After all, he was unable to determine Gania's true strength. Following this, the second round began. This time, Zhao Fu's opponents were all different. Some were tall, some were short, some were ugly, and some were quite good-looking. However, they all had one thing in common, which was their ferocious gazes. It was evident that none of them were good people. Some of these 5 people had just broken through to stage 0-4, while others were at the peak of stage 0-4 and were only a step away from stage 0-5. When the big man had come to find them, they had been quite unwilling to accept him because they had seen Gania's monstrous sword technique. However, after hearing that there were 5 of them, they had agreed. Now that there were 5 of them, they felt quite confident. After all, no matter how powerful Gania's sword technique was, he was still a noob who had only started cultivating for a few days. They felt that Evil Tyrant had been too careless, and none of them thought that they would be like Evil Tyrant. Seeing that it was 5 against 1. If it was before, the spectators would have yelled out, "What do you mean by finding 5 stage 0 to 4 people to fight a noob who has just started cultivating? Are you kidding me? Or should I say, do the 5 of them still have the face to fight a rookie?" However, now all the spectators stared at Gania. They wanted to see just how powerful this mysterious cloaked swordsman was, and they were filled with anticipation. Following this, the host announced the start of the battle, and the 5 people turned into 5 black blurs as they rushed at Gania, surrounding him. Gania continued to hold his sword as he stood there like a block of wood, not moving at all. The 5 people looked quite serious as they walked around Gania, wanting to find any openings on his body. However, they were unable to find anything. The spectators outside also stared intently at the arena and did not make any noise. They knew what sort of battle this was. A while later, within the oppressive atmosphere, one of the people finally couldn't help but act. He raised his large saber and slashed towards Gania from behind. At that moment, Gania also moved. He spun and slashed out with his sword, sending out a cold sword light. The person attacking Gania felt a chill in his heart, and his hair stood on end. Before he could do anything, his head flew into the air. Another person grasped this opportunity and started to attack Gania, slashing towards Gania with his sword. Gania's body leaned to the side, dodging this person's attack. He then used the sword in his hand to slash downwards, slicing the person's abdomen all the way to his left shoulder. Blood sprayed everywhere as the person's internal organs were sliced open. A second person had fallen. At that moment, the third person attacked. He gripped the spear in his hand and stabbed out as fast as lightning, piercing through the air towards Gania's chest. This person was the person who was almost at stage 0-5, and his eyes were incredibly sharp. Just as Gania was about to kill the second person, he attacked incredibly quickly. The spectators outside couldn't help but gasp. However, just as the spear was about to hit Gania flipped backwards. He was unable to dodge this person's attack, and he slashed out with his sword in midair. Pooh! A sword light flashed out, and a bloody gash appeared on that person's head before he fell to the ground dead. Another person was unwilling to give up and rushed up. However, in the next second, Gania did not even look at that person as he slashed out with his sword. Blood spurted out, and that person clutched his throat and struggled on the ground in pain before dying. Gania's cold gaze fell on the final person. This person was a skinny young man who had just broken through to stage 0 to 4. He had come to join the arena, but he had never thought that Gania would be so powerful. Under Gania's cold gaze, that person felt terror in his heart, and his body started to tremble. He threw down his weapon and knelt on the ground, admitting defeat and begging for his life. Seeing this, Gania did not continue to attack. In the blink of an eye, another battle ended. The arena fell silent, and the spectators stared wide-eyed at Gania, who was wearing a black cloak and wielding a blood-stained sword. He gave off a cold, murderous, and mysterious aura. Chapter 133. Following this, Gania competed a few more times, and he won every time. Most of his opponents were at or above stage 0 to 5, and anyone below stage 0 to 5 would definitely die. After these matches, Gania's identity card became an iron card. At the same time, Gania's extremely powerful sword techniques became known to ordinary people, and his name, as the Sword Demon, started to spread. Many people knew that an extremely powerful expert of the way of the sword had come to Battle City, and this was only the first day of Gania's legend in Battle City. In the future, his deeds would definitely spread far and wide, and he would be revered by many people. After a few matches, Zhao Fu left Gania in the arena and had him continue to practice his sword skills. Zhao Fu went to a place that he had bought before to build a restaurant. It was already being renovated and would soon be ready for business. The business model here was the same as the Westfall restaurant, where players were hired as waiters. As for chefs, Zhao Fu did not use players, as Zhao Fu had already nurtured a group of chefs. Back when he had opened the Westfall restaurant, in order to prevent chefs from being poached, Zhao Fu had already started to nurture chefs. These chefs were all residents of Qin City, and compared to player chefs, they were much more loyal to Zhao Fu. They definitely would not be like player chefs who would sell everything for money. If a player chef was poached by someone else, Zhao Fu would be able to accept it. At worst, he would just have to find someone else. However, what Zhao Fu was most afraid of was being bribed by someone else to poison their food. If such a thing happened, the restaurant would be destroyed, and this sort of thing was quite common. In order to be safe, Zhao Fu decided to use his own chefs. As for this restaurant, Zhao Fu would not use the Westfall restaurant's name. After all, the Westfall restaurant had appeared in the Forest of Horrors and the Little Valley, which would make it too eye-catching. Therefore, the name had to be changed. Not only this one, but every restaurant that was opened in the future would have a different name to deceive people. At this time, the restaurant already had a manager, who was a member of the business department. All of them had a certain level of business management knowledge and could deal with all kinds of problems in this area. Now, the restaurant was also recruiting people. Because the treatment was quite good, many girls lined up outside, and Zhao Fu could only walk in from the side. Seeing Zhao Fu walk in, the three people who were in charge of this place hurriedly stood up and bowed respectfully. "Young master," Zhao Fu nodded and said, "Don't mind me, you guys continue. I'm just here to take a look." The three managers obeyed and continued with the interview. The surrounding girls also knew that Zhao Fu was the boss, so they all looked over curiously. Zhao Fu only came to take a few glances, and just as he was about to leave, he saw a familiar person in the crowd. It was a pretty and slim girl who was about the same age as Zhao Fu. Her name was Sun Qin, and she was Zhao Fu's classmate at university. Zhao Fu had never thought that he would meet a classmate from the past, because the people who entered the Heaven Awakened world were randomized. Even if they were from the same place in the real world, they would appear somewhere else after entering the Heaven Awakened world. Zhao Fu thought to himself that the more passages he opened in the future, the more people he would meet. Zhao Fu did not feel much about this, and Zhao Fu and Sun Qin's relationship was that of ordinary classmates. They had only exchanged a few words and had a good impression of each other. Sun Qin sensed Zhao Fu's gaze, and she looked up at the mysterious black cloaked figure in front of her. She suddenly felt a trace of familiarity, but she was just a commoner and had never seen such a grand figure before. As far as she knew, this was the first restaurant that a player had opened in Battle City. Just the land alone cost 80 gold. 80 gold was equivalent to $8 million in the real world. Even though the value of money in the real world had greatly decreased recently, it was still $8 million. She didn't even dare to imagine that she would have so much money. Sun Qin took Zhao Fu to be the young master of a large family or a young master of a large corporation. As such, facing Zhao Fu's gaze, Sun Qin did not dare to say anything. After all, that sort of person had 100 ways to kill you. By now, Zhao Fu looked away. He remembered that Sun Qin was a university student from a rural village, and she had 4 younger siblings. She was quite poor financially, or else she would not have chosen to work in the Heaven Awakened world. Zhao Fu called over the manager and whispered to him that he would accept Sun Qin. The manager respectfully nodded and looked at Sun Qin, making Sun Qin feel quite strange. After speaking, Zhao Fu left. When it came to matters like this, Zhao Fu would help if he could. After Zhao Fu left, the manager walked over to Sun Qin and slightly smiled as he said, "Congratulations! You've been hired." What? Sun Qin was quite shocked. She had not even gone through the interview yet. So how had she been hired so quickly? Sun Qin had thought that she would not be hired, as there were 300 or so women applying. With the pressure from the competition, Sun Qin had lost all confidence. However, she had never thought that she would be hired just like that. Sun Qin felt that this had something to do with the mysterious boss looking at her. At the same time, she wondered if she really knew such a grand figure. "Young Miss Sun, you can start working tomorrow," the manager said to Sun Qin in a friendly manner. Sun Qin quickly came back to her senses and happily nodded. Even though she did not know why, she would be able to earn a lot of money by working here. Not only would she be able to pay for her tuition, but she would also be able to support her family. So she was naturally quite happy. "Thank you. I'll be going now." Sun Qin thanked the manager before leaving the Heaven Awakened world. She planned to tell her family about the good news. Over at Zhao Fu's side, Zhao Fu came to a building that was being renovated. This was the base of a merchant guild, which was established by Zhao Fu. It was called the Misty Rain Merchant Guild, and it managed all sorts of businesses. It was directly managed by Qin's business department. This sort of merchant guild would be involved in many businesses, and the profits would be quite high, so it was quite eye-catching. Zhao Fu planned to establish 4 merchant guilds, and they would appear at different times and places. This way, no one would suspect that they belonged to the same merchant guild. At the same time, Zhao Fu also wanted to establish a few factions. These factions would mostly be made up of players, and they would have many uses. However, Zhao Fu would not go into detail about them, and Zhao Fu would control everything from behind the scenes. However, Zhao Fu had not met the right person or opportunity yet, so this plan was temporarily put on hold. Chapter 134. With the experience from the first time, Zhao Fu brought very few people with him this time. There were 5 scholars who specialized in building teleportation portals and 3 ordinary soldiers. This path led to 100 bamboo, and the process of opening this path was almost the same as before. Zhao Fu used teleportation channels 20 or so times, found a cave, used a city creation stone, and established a village within it before connecting to 100 Bamboo's 4-system main cities. 100 Bamboo was a place like its name. There were a lot of bamboos here, and the green bamboo forest was like a green ocean. It was very spectacular and beautiful. At the same time, there were many types of bamboo here, and there was no lack of 100-year-old bamboos that were tens of meters tall and as thick as buckets. Bamboo had replaced ordinary wood here, so most of the buildings here were mainly made of bamboo. The style was very fresh and elegant. Zhao Fu went to the four-system main cities and bought some property before finding a place to open a restaurant. Only after taking care of these things did Zhao Fu have time to walk around the system main cities to see if there were any specialties. Then, after a few rounds, he gained something. Zhao Fu found that the bamboo rats here were very large and tasted abnormally delicious. They were very popular, and there were many dishes in 100 Bamboo that used bamboo rats as the main ingredient. At the same time, because there was bamboo everywhere, there was no shortage of food for countless bamboo rats, so there was a lot of them. The price of bamboo rats wasn't expensive either. A bamboo rat that weighed 2 to 5 kilograms only cost 30 copper coins. After seeing the bamboo rats, Zhao Fu bought some and planned to use them to make his own dishes. As time went on and the various large factions developed, there would soon be people who would become barons and be able to buy property in the system main cities. If they also opened restaurants, Zhao Fu's restaurant's business would be greatly affected. Making use of things that others didn't have and making all kinds of exclusive dishes was an advantage. It was also the key to winning in many restaurants. After dealing with these things, Zhao Fu returned to Qingtown again. As soon as he came back, he found that Li Wen was waiting for him with a happy expression. Right now, the two teams were exploring the underground passageway. Because everything below was unknown, the danger level was quite high, so Zhao Fu told Li Wen and the others to be careful. Even though they had slowed down, Zhao Fu felt that their safety was the most important. Li Wen spent most of his time in the underground passageway, and it was very rare to see him. Seeing that Li Wen was waiting for him, Zhao Fu asked curiously, "Li Wen, why are you looking for me?" Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Li Wen bowed and smiled as he took out 10 or so orbs of light from his spatial ring. These orbs of light glowed with a faint white light, and within them seemed to be images of mighty soldiers. That's right, they were all soldier souls. Seeing so many soldier souls, Zhao Fu felt quite delighted. Adding on the soldier souls he had obtained from before, he now had 103 soldier souls, enough to fuse a general armament. Zhao Fu had coveted a general armament for a long time, and now that he could finally have one, he was quite happy. "Master, I want it." At that moment, the Sky Demon's voice sounded out in Zhao Fu's mind. With so many pure soul items, they would be incredibly beneficial to her. However, Zhao Fu immediately refused because there were very few soldier souls, and Zhao Fu couldn't casually let the Sky Demon devour them. After all, Zhao Fu wanted to collect 24 general armaments and obtain a king armament. The king's ring that Zhao Fu had been fused with an ancient king armament shard, and just a shard was already incredibly useful. Just how powerful would a complete king armament be? After hearing Zhao Fu's refusal, the Sky Demon became quite unhappy, and it shrunk back into its sword and did not say anything else. Following this, Zhao Fu took out soldier souls and started to fuse them together. At the start, Zhao Fu fused 2 soldier souls together. After fusing them together, the outer appearance didn't change much, but the illusory soldiers seemed to become more corporeal, and the power they gave off became more powerful. Following this, Zhao Fu continued to fuse them, and he fused a 3rd, 4th, and 5th soldier souls. As Zhao Fu fused more and more soldier souls, the illusory soldiers within the orb of light became more corporeal and gave off extraordinary power. Only now did Zhao Fu fuse the 10 soldier souls together. Zhao Fu looked at the soldier soul stats and found that they had changed. Divine Soldier Soul, an item created by fusing many soldier souls. It can be used to strengthen equipment, summon, or fuse into a formation or structure to act as a guardian spirit. Divine soldier souls were much more useful than soldier souls, and they could even be used for summoning. Zhao Fu guessed that summoning was similar to soul crystals, such as the soul crystal that Zhao Fu had used to summon the Ironback Demon Bear. However, this divine soldier soul didn't seem to have a summoning limit, so it could be used many times. After looking at the divine soldier soul stats, Zhao Fu wanted to continue fusing them, but he received a system announcement that he couldn't fuse them anymore. What does this mean? Didn't it say that after gathering 100 soldier souls, one could fuse them into a general armament? Why can't I fuse them anymore? Zhao Fu felt quite confused, and after looking at the system announcement, he realized what was going on. It turned out that it was impossible to directly fuse 100 soldier souls together. Instead, the 100 soldier souls had to be fused into 10 divine soldier souls before they could be fused together. Moreover, one had to have a general profession before they could fuse together. Seeing this, Zhao Fu ordered people to call Bai Qi over. Many people heard that he was going to fuse a general armament, and they all ran over out of curiosity. After all, they had obtained this general armament not long after discovering the underground passageway. Back then, they had been quite weak, but they still remembered how powerful the skeleton captain was. Back then, everyone knew that the soldier souls it had dropped weren't ordinary items, and they had been looking forward to fusing them into a general armament. Now, they had finally succeeded. Your Majesty! After a while, Bai Qi hurried over and cupped his hands as he called out to Zhao Fu. Hearing this, Zhao Fu turned to look at Bai Qi and smiled. He handed the 10 divine soldier souls to him so that he could fuse them. Bai Qi knew why Zhao Fu had come to find him, so he wasn't too surprised. At the same time, he was quite curious about what a general armament was. Following the system announcement, Bai Qi started to fuse them. The 10 soldier souls gave off a large amount of white light and floated into the sky from Bai Qi's hands, forming a circle with him at the center. The white light that the soldier souls gave off became bigger and bigger until they formed 10 gigantic orbs of light. Boom! An explosion sounded out as the 10 giant balls of light unleashed a powerful force, causing the entire sky to tremble. In that instant, clouds swirled around Bai Qi, causing a massive gale to sweep out. At that moment, the 10 soldier souls within the 10 orbs of light started to melt like ice before turning into traces of violet qi. The 10 orbs of light seemed to resonate with each other. Boom! Another massive explosion sounded out as a massive violet star giving off a noble starlight, and a boundless aura broke through the restrictions of the day and descended above Qin. Chapter 135. How could someone have a general star return so quickly? Countless ability users and espers looked up at the violet star in the sky, feeling incredibly shocked and speechless. A general star was a type of fate that resonated with the stars in the sky. Anyone with a general star would definitely become a great general in the future, and they were extremely powerful. They were skilled in both literature and martial arts, and they could govern and bring peace to a country. Their role was to assist a ruler, and they were people who gathered great fate. In ancient times, geomancers often said that having a general star in one's fate meant that one's future achievements would be extraordinary, and they would definitely become a powerful figure. For example, Han Exen, Zhuge Liang, Qin Xiong, all of these people were people who would go down in history, and all of them had made great contributions to a ruler. From this, one could see how important they were. Now that the Heaven Awakened world had appeared, many historical great generals had been revived. Their general stars had been sealed, and they would slowly be unsealed as time passed. This was called General Star Return by ability users and espers. Of course, the appearance of this violet star in the sky was also related to general stars in one's fate. General stars in one's fate were different from general stars in one's fate. It meant that anyone with a general star in their fate would have this violet star appear when they were born. General stars in one's fate refer to those who were born as great generals, while general stars in one's fate refer to those whose general stars have been sealed. Currently, no one in the Heaven Awakened world who had general stars in their fate had discovered this, but that did not mean that it was impossible. After all, general stars in one's fate were a product of massive amounts of fate rising and falling. For example, during chaotic times, many people with general stars in their fate would descend, and when a country was unstable, there would also be general stars in their fate. They would only appear when fate rose and fell, and the Heaven Awakened world was currently in a chaotic era, so there would most likely be many people with general stars in their fate. Now, these ability users and espers believe that this violet star was a general star return rather than a general star in one's fate. This was because the general star's changes had not stopped, and it gave off a heavy sense of history. Soon, everyone turned to look at Town. At the center of the massive storm, under the violet star, Bai Chi received a system announcement and slowly drew the star-slashing sword at his waist, pointing it towards the sky. Ark! Bai Chi roared as a massive aura exploded out from his body, and a large amount of blood-red aura rushed out from his body. By now, the storm was many times stronger than before, and sand and pebbles were sent flying everywhere. The countless people who had come to watch the show did their best to defend against the berserk wind, but they were still blown far away. Zhao Fu also released a black dragon inscription barrier, allowing him to stand firmly within the berserk wind. Boom! A rumbling sound rang out as several blood-red arcs of lightning flashed around Bai Chi. Then, a blood-red pillar of light burst out of Bai Chi's body and shot straight towards the huge purple star. The blood-red pillar of light smashed into a violet star. The violet star, which had been giving off a noble light, was gradually dyed blood-red, and a cold and murderous aura spread out from it. Countless people with special abilities saw the purple star turn blood-red, and their pupils constricted as they exclaimed, 7 kills. 7 kills was one of the 13 general stars, and it was responsible for killing. It was a general star with a heavy, murderous nature. At the same time, when the 7 kills, Voracious Wolf, and Army Destroyer stars met, they would form the Slaughter Destroyer Wolf formation. Once these 3 stars gathered, the world would be irreversible. The 7-kill star gave off a faint blood-red light as it hung in the blue sky, creating a strange scene. At this moment, the blood-red pillar of light around Bai Chi's body gradually weakened, becoming smaller and smaller, and it was about to disappear. Boom! The 7 murders star in the sky shot down a blood-red pillar of starlight that landed on Bai Chi's body. The air instantly exploded, turning into a shockwave that spread out in all directions. This massive shockwave caused the ground to crack, and Zhao Fu, who was beside him, took a step back. Luckily, the storm had already stopped. Under the blood-red pillar of starlight, Bai Chi still pointed his sword towards the heavens, but the starlight passed through his body, causing his body to change. His eyes revealed a cold, blood-red light, and his long black hair was disheveled because of the storm. He stood there, giving off a murderous aura, making him look incredibly terrifying. At this moment, the 10 massive orbs of light in the sky slowly gathered towards Bai Chi and fused into the sword that he was holding up. After the originally silver-white star-slashing sword fused with the sphere of light, it first turned into a noble purple sword. Then, the purple slowly turned into a blood-colored sword. Just like the blood-colored starlight, it emitted an ice-cold, killing intent. The sword's body flowed with light, and the words 7 kills were engraved on it. Finally, the 7-kill sword was completely formed. Following this, the blood-red pillar of starlight became smaller and smaller before disappearing, and the blood-red star in the sky also slowly disappeared. All of the abnormal signs disappeared, leaving behind a mess on the ground. Bai Chi stood at the center, and a corporeal killing intent surrounded him, making it so that no creature dared to approach him. By now, Bai Chi had returned to the Bai Chi from history. Killing one is a sin, but killing 10,000 is a hero. Killing 9 million is a hero among heroes. In history, Bai Chi was the master of the 7 kills fate, and he had fought on the battlefield for 37 years. He had conquered 70 or so cities and killed over 1 million enemies, and he had never lost a battle. However, those who had a good beginning might not have a good ending, and he had been ordered to die in the end. Thinking about how he had been ordered to die, Zhao Fu could not help but sigh. This was indeed the fault of a ruler, not a subject. Zhao Fu would never do such a thing again in the future. Seeing the blood-red star slowly disappear, countless espers and ability users looked away and resisted the urge to try divining. After all, the backlash from a general star fate was only slightly smaller than divining the son of heaven's fate. If he had a son of heaven's fate with a massive amount of fate, the backlash would have been 3 times greater. Now, there was no one with a general star fate, so the person who had unsealed the 7-kill star must have been someone else. Who is this person, and who is his subordinate? He was the first to unseal the 7-kill star, so his name will definitely shake the world in the future. Suddenly, the espers and ability users realized that the 7 kills star had appeared in a direction that no one wanted to mention, which was the north. Thinking of something, everyone looked shocked and couldn't help but say, "It can't be like that, right? This 7 kills star belongs to Qin?" Chapter 136. Many pretentious espers and espers thought about how Qin had received all of China's fate, and now that he had the 7 Murders sect, he would be able to form a massive faction in the future. As such, many people started to think about joining him. Some espers and espers who already had their own legatees reported this matter to their legatees, and Qin's harsh words once again sounded out in their ears. The fact that China's fate had been tilted towards Qintown had pushed Qin's name to the top, causing everyone to feel quite dissatisfied. Right now, the last thing they wanted to hear was news about Qin, but now they heard news about Qin. Luckily, it was possible that the 7 Murders sect didn't belong to Qintown, so this matter didn't cause too much of a ruckus. Elsewhere, Xianru stood outside the building and looked towards the Qintown. A beautiful smile appeared on her face as she muttered to herself, "Your Majesty, you didn't let me down? Beautiful teacher, what are you doing? The kitchen is looking for you." Hua Qing asked curiously when he saw Xianru standing there. Xianru turned to look at Hua Qing and shook her head as she said, "I'll leave the kitchen to you for now. I'm going to leave the heaven-awakened world for a while." "Oh." Hua Qing nodded and watched Xianru's body slowly disappear before returning to the kitchen. Now that he was in charge of the kitchen, he felt quite delighted and wanted to see how his cooking skills were progressing. Over at Zhang Heng, who had been riding on his donkey towards Battle City, looked at the disappearing 7 Murder star with a serious expression and said, "In the future, Great Qin will definitely become one of the most powerful countries." In Demon Tree City, there were 2 people from the Mahis family. After seeing the 7 Murder star disappear, the person called Uncle Lin couldn't help but sigh as he said, "With such dense killing intent, this person will definitely be stained with blood in the future." The young man next to him also nodded and said, "It gives me a very uncomfortable feeling." Uncle Lin nodded and explained, "The Mahis family's principles are love with impartiality, non-aggression, frugality, clear-mindedness, and the will of the heavens. This person has killed too much and is a general star, which is why your heavens works Inc. I feel so uncomfortable." The young man understood and didn't say anything else. He lowered his head and played with the puppet in his hand. Finally, back at Qintown, Qi returned to normal. Looking at the mess, he cupped his hands and said to Zhao Fu apologetically, "Your Highness, sorry." Hearing Bai Qi's words, Zhao Fu lightly laughed. How could he blame Bai Qi? He shook his head, indicating that Bai Qi did not mind. In actuality, Zhao Fu had never thought that general stars would be unlocked when fusing a general armament, and he did not know much about general stars. Zhao Fu asked curiously, "Bai Qi, how does it feel to unseal your general star?" Hearing this, Bai Qi thought for a moment before replying, "Your Majesty, my stats haven't changed much, but I feel much better than before." Facing this vague reply, Zhao Fu thought about it and decided that unsealing the general star was most likely some sort of change in fate, so he did not ask any further. Zhao Fu then looked at the blood-red sword in Zhao Fu's hand. He was quite interested in this sword because it had fused with a general armament and seemed to have fused with a general star. This sword's effects would most likely be quite extraordinary, and Zhao Fu took it and looked at it. 7 Murders sword, grade, epic stats, strength plus 25, intelligence plus 15, constitution plus 15, agility plus 15, description, a half-legendary grade weapon that has been corroded by time. After fusing with a general armament and the 7 Murders General Star's power, it has become a general armament, the 7 Murders Sword. This sword has 6 special effects. Special Effect 1. General's Power. Commander soldiers receive this effect, all stats plus 5. This effect can be stacked up to 4 times, and the effect will decrease with each stack. When Zhao Fu saw the first effect, he felt incredibly delighted. After all, plus 5 to all stats was equivalent to 20 stat points, which was the same as a piece of low-grade gold-grade equipment. Now, all of the soldiers under Bai Chi's command had received a bonus from a piece of gold-grade equipment. This was enough to make anyone feel incredibly happy. What was even more surprising was that this effect could be stacked up to 4 times. However, the effect would decrease with each stack. If Zhao Fu had many general armaments, he would have to combine them to use them. This meant that when a few general professions with general armaments were gathered together, they would receive all stats. The first general armament would receive all stats plus 5. The second general armament would receive all stats plus 4. The third general armament would receive all stats plus 3. And the fourth general armament would receive all stats plus 2. 4 general armaments gave a total of 56 stat points, which was simply too monstrous. It was almost the same as a very good piece of legendary grade equipment. However, the key thing was whether or not he would be able to obtain so many general armaments. Special Effect 2. General's Courage. This effect greatly increases morale and makes soldiers' minds more resolute. Resistance to illusions and formations plus 200%, and the effect can be stacked up to 6 times. This effect was quite good. In the future, when the battles increased, they would definitely meet enemies who were proficient in illusions and formations, and this effect would be quite effective. The 200% meant that the effects of illusions would be doubled, and the effect could be stacked up to 6 times, which meant that the effects would be reduced by 12 times. Special Effect 3. General's Light. This effect increases soldiers' recovery speed and has a certain healing effect. The effect can be stacked up to 12 times. Special Effect 4. General Soldiers. This effect increases the limit of one's unique military by 200% and increases the first 3 special effects of unique military by 50%. This effect cannot be stacked, and it can only be stacked on one special effect. As for the 4th effect, there was no need to talk about the upper limit of unique military. The unique military special effects would be increased by 50%, which meant that the first 3 special effects of unique military would be increased by 50%. However, there was no way to stack the effects, which meant that one's equipment would only receive an increase of 50%. For example, the first effect would give all stats plus 5, and the 4th effect would give all stats plus 7, but it would not be possible to stack the effects by 50%. Special Effect 5. Soldier Aura Formation. Each soldier can give off their own soldier aura, and all of their soldier auras can be fused to form powerful weapons or beasts. Only now did Zhao Fu realize that the 5th effect was the most powerful, as it could gather all of a soldier's strength. For example, if 1,000 soldiers' soldier auras were gathered, they could form a ferocious tiger. Because this tiger had the strength of 1,000 soldiers, it definitely wouldn't be weak, and it would definitely be a killing machine on the battlefield. Chapter 137. Slaughterer. This effect causes soldiers to enter a berserk state of slaughter. Soldiers in this state have their strength increased by 5 to 8 times, and they receive 7 Murders Power. Because 7 Murders Power belongs to one of the 13 general stars, the 7 Murders Star, they receive minus 30% magic damage and minus 80% spirit damage. They have no effect on illusions and are greatly immune to divine arts. However, the downside is that all soldiers in this state will lose their rationality. This was the 6th effect of the 7 Murders Sword, which was the effect of the 7 Murders Star's influence. This effect was incredibly powerful, and all strength could be increased by 5 to 8 times, and the user could also obtain the 7 Murders Power. Furthermore, there were many types of immunity effects, and soldiers in this state could completely transform into humanoid weapons. It was absolutely terrifying. However, the flaw was also extremely obvious. They would lose all rationality, which meant that the soldiers would not be easily controlled. Apart from those who had the Seven Murders sword and the fate of the Seven Murders general, it was very difficult for anyone to suppress these soldiers who had fallen into a state of slaughter. The sixth effect of a slaughterer needed to be used carefully, and it could only be used at critical moments. After looking at the Seven Murders sword stats, Zhao Fu returned it to Bai Qi. Now that Bai Qi had obtained the Seven Murders sword, Zhao Fu felt even more anticipation towards the king armament that he would be able to fuse with 24 general armaments. With the Seven Murders sword and the Sky Demon sword, Qin Village now had 2 epic grade items, which was quite a good achievement. Apart from Zhao Fu, no other player faction had an epic grade item. Following this, everything went according to plan. The exploration team was given to Bai Qi to lead, while Wang Jian stayed at the rear. Li Si took care of internal affairs, and Ba Qing took care of the business. Now that there were people in charge of everything, Zhao Fu was able to relax. It seemed that there was nothing else that Zhao Fu needed to do. He was only needed to buy property in other system main cities, and everything else was taken care of by people in charge. Moreover, 2 roads had been opened, and void beasts only spawned once every 3 days, so Zhao Fu didn't have much to do for now. Since he had nothing to do, Zhao Fu walked around Qintown a few times. He looked at the thriving development of Qintown and went to Rising Qin Academy to have a look. Zhao Fu was also quite surprised. He saw that Asani had changed into a scholar's robe, and her aura was no longer as fantastical as before. She now had a trace of Chinese elegance, and she seemed like a teacher when she lectured. Secondly, even though the Rising Qin Academy's conditions were tough, these students seemed to be very serious. This was how people were. The harder it was to obtain something, the more they treasured it. Only with great pressure would they be motivated. When the country was in ruins, some people would carry great ideals and study for the sake of the country's rise. However, when material resources were abundant, reading good books was only for the sake of a better future. After looking around for a while, Zhao Fu decided that there was nothing else to do, so he returned to his room and sat cross-legged on his bed. He consumed a few little spirit pills and spent the rest of his time on raising his cultivation. Time gradually passed, and soon it was the next day. Zhao Fu let out a breath and slowly opened his eyes. By now, his cultivation had reached stage 0 to 9, and he was only a stage away from breaking through to stage 1. Zhao Fu didn't know what would happen to players when they broke through to stage 1. Thinking about how he hadn't left the Heaven Awakened world in a long time, Zhao Fu returned to the real world. Just as his consciousness returned to his body, he felt a familiar sense of hunger. Staying in the Heaven Awakened world for too long was a bad thing. If he didn't leave, he might actually starve to death. Zhao Fu asked the bodyguard outside to bring some food back, and he heard that Wu Qingyang had come looking for him. Zhao Fu felt quite curious as to why she had come looking for him. However, after hearing from the bodyguard that she had left after seeing Zhao Fu in the Heaven Awakened world, she felt that it wasn't important, so Zhao Fu didn't mind. As he carried the food, he opened the Heaven Awakened world for him, and what he saw caused his eyes to widen. His hands trembled, and he almost dropped his bowl and chopsticks. Now, Zhao Fu finally realized how big of a commotion he had caused. The hottest topic on the Heaven Awakened World Forum, as well as the #1 post, was about Great Qin. What's going on? Zhao Fu had never thought that Qin would receive so much attention. Before, Zhao Fu had always kept a low profile, unlike the other legatees who were extremely high profile. No matter what they did, they would receive a lot of attention, and they would often be the type that would make the headlines. The benefit of being high profile was that they had more influence on ordinary people, which was an advertisement. The more famous they were, the more support they would receive. Even though the Heaven Awakened world could increase the population, the ordinary people in the real world were also a massive resource. Because they were high profile, they had the support of their families. After China's government had been exposed, they had also become more high profile. Things related to them would often make the headlines, such as displaying the spirit of China's military and attacking a certain country. Zhao Fu was simply too weak in the real world, so he could only keep a low profile. At the same time, he was afraid that others would find out about him. As such, even though Qin was mysterious, there was not much news about him, so he did not receive much attention. However, he had now made the headlines, and his popularity had not decreased at all. Zhao Fu guessed that it was because of the Chinese race's fate. Even though he had been prepared for this, when Zhao Fu clicked on it, he was still shocked. Countless prime ministers, presidents, and prime ministers wanted to meet him. It wasn't just foreign countries either. Even China's most powerful person praised him for being young and promising, and they wanted to discuss important matters of the country with him. Xia, Shang, Zhou, on all of the legatees of the dynasties have said that Qin, don't be too arrogant and domineering. Don't be too arrogant and domineering. We're not any weaker than you. Global voting. Out of the top 10 mysteries in the heaven-awakened world, who is Qin's legatee? Su Yiyan, a super popular celebrity, has expressed that she likes domineering men who conquer the world. She even thinks of this mysterious Qin's legatee as her boyfriend, breaking countless fans' hearts. Recently, countless foreign media outlets have been fighting to report news about Qin, which has become the headlines of the world. This has greatly increased China's influence and helped China's culture to communicate with the rest of the world. Thailand's super popular internet celebrity, the #1 bewitching man in history, has boldly expressed his love for Qin's legatee. He is willing to devote himself to him, and they have agreed to meet at a certain place. The #1 bewitching man is already waiting, and he has started a 24-hour live broadcast for everyone to witness this romantic moment. The bewitching man also said, Chapter 138. There were many messages, and Zhao Fu did not read them all. Instead, he chose a few of the more important ones. One of the messages was that the leaders of the Ying family's major branches had personally come out and expressed their willingness to hand over all of their factions and resources to Zhao Fu. If Zhao Fu returned to the Ying family, he would immediately become the leader of the entire Ying family. They believed that Zhao Fu would be able to lead Qin back to its former glory, and they swore that if they had any thoughts of suppressing the Ying family, they would die without a grave. These people had publicly expressed their stance and made such a heavy oath, showing their sincerity. However, Zhao Fu did not plan on revealing himself. Would you hand your life over to a promise that has no binding power? Even though the Ying family's factions and resources are quite tempting, you can see the sincerity of the Ying family's leaders. However, right now, Zhao Fu was still too weak and couldn't do much. He didn't fantasize about how merciful his enemies were, and before he had the power to protect himself, he would not reveal his identity. The second message was that the legatees of the small kingdoms in the northern part of the Midland continent were the state of Wei from the Warring States period, the state of Qi from the 16 Kingdoms period, the state of later Zhou from the 5 Dynasties and 10 Kingdoms period, and Great Shun, which was established by Li Zicheng. These 4 legatees were worried that Qin would be in the north, so they gathered all of the legatees in the north to form a Qin resistance alliance. Because of China's long history, there were many small kingdoms, and because they belonged to different eras, some kingdoms' names were repeated. This second message caused Zhao Fu to frown. It's too early. Right now, all of the factions are only at the level of villages or towns, and most of them are unable to leave their regions. The system factions are the main power in the Heaven-Awakened world, and yet they're forming a Qin resistance alliance at such a time. Even though Qin has received China's fate and is one of China's 5 great legatees, he's only a threat on the surface and isn't actually a threat. Could Qin just run over and destroy them all? That's impossible, and yet they're already calling for people to resist Qin. Zhao Fu had never expected this. However, only 6 people had joined the Qin Resistance Alliance, and the other factions in the north did not say anything. After all, this would be a public declaration of war against Qin. Everyone else understood that Great Qin was the greatest danger, and this meant that it was incredibly powerful. However, daring to declare war against it at a time like this was incredibly unwise, as development was the most important thing right now. Since you know how powerful it is, you still dare to do such a provocative thing. You're just like a child, publicly provoking an adult. Aren't you just asking for a beating? Even though it seemed that the Qin Resistance Alliance wouldn't be able to do anything to Qin, it was Zhao Fu felt that Qin. Zhao could not help but to feel that. Zhao Fu, Fu Zhao, Hu Qin, not Fu He Zhao, Hu Qin, and not. The only possibility was that the 100 schools of thought school of vertical and horizontal was the school of vertical and horizontal. After all, this was an alliance. Zhao Fu was quite angry about the vertical and horizontal schools' actions, since they had made their stand against Qin so quickly and wanted to use Qin as a chess piece. Zhao Fu would not show them any mercy. Back then, Qin allied with 6 other states and forced the state of Qin to abandon its plan to become emperor. The state of Qin didn't even dare to leave Hanga Pass for 15 years. Zhao Fu, let's see if he has the ability to stop Qin's rise. The third message was, the 7 murders have appeared. The General Star has returned to Qin. Zhao Fu did not expect that there would be so many people paying attention to the General Star, and they even guessed that it belonged to Qin. Fortunately, they could not confirm this, and could only guess that it most likely belonged to Qin. Right now, Zhao Fu really did not want to do anything that would attract too much attention to Qin. This would cause a lot of inconvenience and would not be beneficial to Qin's development. There were also many people who commented that they were Mao Mountain's Zhang family and Southern Border's Miao family were willing to serve Qin and hoped that Qin's legatee would take them in. Of course, Zhao Fu did not have time to pay attention to these messages. Perhaps they had some ability, but they were still small fries. After looking through these messages, Zhao Fu hurriedly finished eating and was about to enter the heaven-awakened world. However, at that moment, he received a call from his grandmother, saying that it was his grandpa's birthday today and that they should go for a reunion dinner. If it was a normal matter, Zhao Fu would have tactfully refused. However, it was his grandpa's birthday, and even though they had already eaten, Zhao Fu felt that it was better to go. Zhao Fu brought his personal bodyguard and bought a gift before heading to his grandpa's home. Zhao Fu felt quite complicated towards this familial love, and he felt that it was too unfamiliar. He had planned to leave after giving them the gift, but his grandpa and grandma kept chatting with him. They even asked if Zhao Fu had a girlfriend and wanted to introduce one to Zhao Fu. Even though there were a lot of things they talked about and the content of the conversation made Zhao Fu not know whether to laugh or cry, it made Zhao Fu feel a sense of acceptance towards this familial love. After staying there for a long time, Zhao Fu once again returned to the heaven-awakened world. By now, another day had passed in the heaven-awakened world, and a void beast had spawned in the den. Zhao Fu took one of its void crystals and started to open up the third path. Zhao Fu used the same method as before to open up the path to Red Plum Plains. He used a teleportation channel and used a normal city creation stone to arrive at Red Plum Plains, obtaining 10 achievement points. Zhao Fu didn't know if achievement points could be farmed or if he could obtain 10 achievement points in every region. If that was the case, becoming a baron would be incredibly easy. After all, go to a region would be incredibly difficult for ordinary people. However, it was now incredibly easy for Qin. Every 3 days, he would be able to go to another region. Becoming a baron required 1,000 achievement points, and going to a region would give him 10 achievement points. 10 regions would give him 100 achievement points, and 100 regions would give him 1,000 achievement points. Zhao Fu looked at the other people that Zhao Fu had brought. Even though they weren't players, but indigenous residents, their achievement points had increased. This meant that the achievement points in this region were also effective for indigenous residents. Chapter 139. However, Zhao Fu felt that this method of obtaining achievement points definitely had its limits. He wasn't sure about the specifics, and he would have to test it himself to find out. Zhao Fu then looked at Red Plum Plains. Red Plum Plains was a plain, and most of it was grassy plains. The ground was covered with short, red fruits that looked like plums, which was why it was called Red Plum Plains. Moreover, Because it was a plain, there were many different kinds of horses that lived here, and many players went to the grassy plains to catch horses. The ordinary horses here were brown horses, and they were the most common. Zhao Fu looked at them and found that whether it was in terms of size or endurance, they couldn't compare to his black forest horses. However, there are also horses called Red Lightning here. Just like its name, Red Lightning's entire body was red, including its mane and tail. When it ran, it was incredibly fast, like a bolt of red lightning. In terms of speed, it was slightly faster than the Black Forest horses, but in terms of jumping over obstacles, the Black Forest horses had a slight advantage. This was because the two types of horses lived in different environments. There were many trees in the forest, and there were many obstacles to leap over. On the other hand, the plains were flat, and there weren't many obstacles to run over. Zhao Fu was quite interested in the Red Lightning horses, and he wanted to see if he could obtain a den to raise them. Following this, Zhao Fu returned to proper business. Red Plum Plains only had 3 system main cities, which are called Great Ancient City, Drooping City, and Greengrass City. The buildings here were made of stone and wood, and they gave off an exotic aura. The first city Zhao Fu went to was Great Ancient City. He bought 20 properties and prepared to open a restaurant. After doing these things, Zhao Fu started to walk around Great Ancient City to see if he could make any other gains. At that moment, he found that there were many people gathered around a stall, and Zhao Fu went over to take a look out of curiosity. At the center of the stall was a young man who looked 24 or 25 years old. He wore black clothes and had a long saber on his back. His body gave off a sharp saber aura, and it seemed that he was a saber user. He was a player, and Zhao Fu felt quite shocked because it was rare to see a player give off such a sharp aura. Normally, Zhao Fu would only be able to sense this from indigenous residents. This person was most likely someone from an ancient martial arts family, and it was only because he had trained with the saber since he was young that he had such a powerful aura. There was a faint blue, oval-shaped jade on the stall in front of him. It was very smooth, and there was a picture of a horse's head engraved on it. After all, it was this item that had attracted so many people's gazes. Zhao Fu looked at it curiously and received this information. Horse Jade Soul, a wondrous item that can be used on a Denver. However, it is limited to horses, and it can strengthen the horse's strength, increase the number of dens spawned by 15, and increase the chance of attracting high-grade horses by 30%. This item was quite good. First, it could strengthen the strength of the horse itself. Whether it was in terms of strength, speed, recovery, or endurance, the horse would be greatly enhanced. It could also increase a den spawn rate by 15. Normally, a den could spawn 5 den per day, but after using this, it could spawn 20 den per day. The third stat was quite important, as a higher grade meant greater growth. This was quite rare, and Zhao Fu could use it on the Black Forest Horse Denver. How much are you selling this for? Zhao Fu asked. The young man sitting at the stall glanced at it and calmly replied, "Not selling. I'm only trading for gold-grade materials." So they wanted gold-grade materials. Zhao Fu understood why this item hadn't been sold yet, even though it was quite good. Even though Zhao Fu already had epic-grade equipment, gold-grade equipment was incredibly rare on the market. Normally, gold-grade materials could only be found in large auctions, and they couldn't be found in ordinary shops. Zhao Fu thought for a moment. The Horse Jade Soul was a strategic material that could increase a den stats, and gold-grade materials weren't that important to Zhao Fu, so he could trade for it. Zhao Fu nodded and said, "Sure." Following this, Zhao Fu took out a pair of massive beast claws. The claws were black, and they gave off a chilling light. As soon as he took them out, they gave off a powerful and ferocious aura, causing the bystanders to take a step back and cry out, "Lord Grade Material." These are the claws of a Lord Grade Ironback Demon Bear. At that moment, the young man's calm expression changed, and he looked at Zhao Fu with surprise as he said, "My name is Lung Wu, and I owe you a favor." Even though Zhao Fu felt that exchanging for the Horse Jade Soul with the bear claws wasn't a bad deal, in other people's eyes, it was a loss. After all, gold-grade materials were incredibly rare, and to ordinary people, they were incredibly important treasures. What's more, Zhao Fu had taken out a material from a Lord-grade creature, which was even rarer than ordinary ores, so its value was much higher. Moreover, the horse Jade Soul was only useful to Lord-grade players, and it required a horse denver. Most solo players wouldn't be able to use it, so it seemed that Zhao Fu was at a disadvantage. However, Long Wu wasn't someone who would take advantage of others, so he said that he owed Zhao Fu a favor. Hearing Long Wu's words, Zhao Fu was quite surprised to receive a favor for no reason. However, Long Wu's background wasn't simple at all, and he was quite skilled. Perhaps this favor would be useful in the future, so Zhao Fu didn't refuse. He nodded and said, "My name is Zhao Xin." Long Wu nodded, indicating that he would remember this name. Following this, the two of them didn't say anything else, and Long Wu took the bear claws while Zhao Fu took the horse Jade Soul. After obtaining the materials that he wanted, Long Wu got up and left. Zhao Fu continued to walk around Great Ancient City, but he didn't find anything, so he decided to go to the next system main city and buy some property. At that moment, Zhao Fu turned and walked towards the teleportation channel. Suddenly, a 12-year-old beggar wearing tattered clothes and covered in dirt bumped into Zhao Fu. He looked like he had been starving for a long time, and his vision was blurry as he swayed and stumbled into Zhao Fu. After bumping into Zhao Fu, the little beggar hurriedly came to his senses and hurriedly bowed in apology. "Sir, sorry." With that, the little beggar ran away in fear. Zhao Fu stood in place and calmly turned his head. He watched as the little beggar ran away and slowly disappeared from his sight. In a dark alley, the little beggar smiled proudly. As he walked, he tossed a jade pendant in his hand. Suddenly, Chapter 140. Only when people stand at the highest point, when they are at their most confident and pleased, will the memory of falling from such a high place be engraved in their hearts. Zhao Fu coldly looked at the young beggar as his hand gripped the young beggar's throat and started to slowly apply force. The young beggar felt as if his neck was about to snap, and his face became incredibly red. He tried to pry open the hand around his throat, but no matter how much strength he used, he was unable to break free at all. The young beggar felt as if he was going to suffocate, and his legs flailed about wildly. "Let go of my little brother." Two figures appeared beside him and loudly yelled at Zhao Fu. Hearing this, Zhao Fu turned and saw that it was a boy and a girl who looked around 14 or 15 years old. They looked quite delicate, and they looked quite similar. They were most likely twins, and both of them held daggers as they savagely glared at Zhao Fu. Seeing their childish faces, Zhao Fu lightly laughed and casually threw the young beggar away. The young beggar's body flew out like a sandbag and crashed into a wall, causing a muffled sound to ring out as he fell to the ground and fainted. Seeing this, the twins angrily gripped their daggers and rushed over incredibly quickly. If a normal person saw them, they would only see two black blurs rushing towards them. Moments later, the young man arrived in front of Zhao Fu and slashed at Zhao Fu with his dagger. Even though the young man was incredibly fast, in front of Zhao Fu, he was nothing. In fact, Zhao Fu didn't even use a weapon. Instead, he used his king's power and formed a sword with his fingers. A black light gathered around them, making them look like swords. He slashed out. A faint arc of light flashed through the air. Shing! The dagger collided with Zhao Fu's fingers, and the young man was completely dumbfounded. The dagger in his hand had been sliced in two, and, in the next second, he was sent flying by Zhao Fu. He crashed to the ground and was unable to get up. Suddenly, seeing that her big brother was at a disadvantage, the young woman went around to the side and was abnormally fast. In just an instant, she stabbed towards Zhao Fu with her dagger, and Zhao Fu instinctively slashed out with his fingers. However, after thinking about it, he realized that the opponent was a girl, and Zhao Fu did not have any intention of killing them. He just wanted to teach them a lesson. Therefore, when Zhao Fu pointed his sword to the side, the girl thought that Zhao Fu was going to attack, so she also dodged. Ah! A sharp cry sounded out as the sharp fingers tore open the young woman's clothes. Zhao Fu felt quite surprised as he looked at the young woman's chest, revealing a large area of white, tender skin, as well as a pair of developing breasts. The girl hurriedly covered her private parts in panic and retreated far away. Her eyes were red, and she looked as if she was about to cry as she stared at Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu felt quite awkward, and he decided to just teach them a lesson. It was fortunate that they had fallen into his hands this time, but if they fell into someone else's hands again, they might lose their lives. He bent down and picked up the jade pendant that the young beggar had stolen. Zhao Fu normally kept all of his items in a spatial ring, but he kept this jade pendant with him because it was the one he Shinru had given him to conceal his fate. Zhao Fu couldn't afford to lose this item. Zhao Fu didn't want to lose it. Just as he was about to pick up the jade pendant and leave, a fist suddenly shot towards him. A fist brought with it a sharp gust of wind as it flew towards Zhao Fu, and Zhao Fu didn't even think as he clenched his fist to meet it. Boom! The two fists collided, and an explosion sounded out. Zhao Fu was forced back a step, while the other figure retreated 7 or 8 steps before stopping. At the same time, Zhao Fu saw that it was a girl who looked around 17 or 18 years old. Her facial features were exquisite, and she was quite good-looking. She wore tattered clothes, but her face was sickly pale. This girl is so strong. When Zhao Fu had punched out, he had only used less than 10% of his strength. He had long since sensed that his opponent's cultivation wasn't very high, but he hadn't expected her to be so strong that even Zhao Fu had been forced back a step. Sir, I don't know how my 3 little brothers and sisters offended you, but come at me and spare them. The sickly girl wiped away the blood at the corner of her lips and looked at Zhao Fu seriously. From their exchange, just then, she could tell that this black-cloaked person's strength was unfathomable, and she wasn't a match for him at all. She had used her full strength and had attacked first, but she had only been able to force her opponent back a step, while she had been lightly injured. I really don't know how my 3 little brothers and sisters offended such a grand figure when I was sick. Zhao Fu felt quite interested in the sickly girl, and he felt that her strength seemed to come from some sort of bloodline or constitution. There was very little information about bloodlines and constitutions in the Heaven Awakened world, and Zhao Fu didn't have much information about them. Hearing the sickly girl's words, Zhao Fu thought about it. It had been a long time since he had met such a special indigenous resident, and Zhao Fu understood how special she was. Her cultivation was only at stage 0 to 3, but she had such great power. She was a genius, and he could take her back and nurture her. With Zhao Fu's current strength, he could use her 3 little brothers and sisters to force this sickly girl to submit to him. However, this sort of method was too underhanded, and it wouldn't help her wholeheartedly submit to Qin. Zhao Fu didn't hide anything and lightly smiled as he said, "I'm quite interested in you." Hearing this, the sickly girl's expression froze, and she asked, "Are you saying that if I submit to you, you'll spare my 3 little brothers and sisters?" "You could say that, but I won't use their lives to threaten you. I never planned on killing them, so you can think about submitting to me," Zhao Fu explained. The sickly girl thought for a moment before asking, "You really won't harm them?" Zhao Fu earnestly nodded. "All right, I can agree, but you have to give my little brothers and sisters some money and prepare a safe place for them to live so that they won't be harmed." The sickly girl quickly agreed because this mysterious black-cloaked figure was simply too powerful. He could control the lives of her siblings with a single thought. Moreover, the sickly girl felt that this mysterious black-cloaked figure had held back, or else her little brothers and sisters would have long since died. She felt that he wasn't an evil person, so after thinking about it for a long time, the sickly girl quickly agreed. "Big sis Qin, let's not be separated. I don't want that money," the 14 or 15-year-old girl said as she tied up her clothes and covered her important areas. Hearing the conversation between Big Sis Qin and the mysterious black-cloaked figure, she hurriedly ran over and pulled on Big Sis Qin's arm. The young man who had been sent flying clutched his chest as he climbed up with great difficulty and said, "Big Sis Qin, back then, you said that the 4 of us would never be separated. We don't want to leave you." Hearing their words, The sickly girl felt a warmth in her heart, and she felt quite touched. At that moment, Zhao Fu said that he could take in the three of them. Even though they were quite young, their skills far surpassed those of ordinary people, and they were worth nurturing. Chapter 141. What do you think? Do you want to come with me? Zhao Fu asked as he looked at the three people hugging each other. The three of them thought about it and decided that none of them wanted to be separated. In the end, they nodded and agreed before running over to the unconscious little beggar and waking him up. After waking up, the little beggar screamed in terror and instinctively struggled, wanting to run away. It could be seen just how traumatized Zhao Fu was. However, only then did he realize that the people around him were his big sister, second brother, and third sister. Only then did he calm down. Following this, the three of them told him about submitting, and the little beggar nodded and agreed to come with them. However, the little beggar's fear towards Zhao Fu had not decreased, and he did not dare to look up at the mysterious black-cloaked figure. Following this, Zhao Fu asked them some questions and found out some information about them. The four of them were not blood-related siblings and were instead orphans who had gathered together because of something. The sickly young girl was called Tuoba Qing, the boy was called Wu Ling, the girl was called Wu Qing, and the little beggar was called Li Zhongchang. At the same time, because they had submitted and recognized Zhao Fu as their master, Zhao Fu could look at their stats and grades. What shocked Zhao Fu was that Tuoba Qing was SSS grade, while Wu Ling, Wu Qing, and Li Zhongchang were a grade. Wu Ling and the other two were a grade, so Zhao Fu was not too surprised. What shocked Zhao Fu was that Tuoba Qing, the sickly young girl, was actually SSS grade. Putting aside historical figures like Bai Qi and Wang Jian, it was the first time Zhao Fu had seen an SSS grade indigenous resident. With this grade, most indigenous residents would be city lords, and Zhao Fu had never thought that this sickly young girl would have SSS grade. The system main cities had massive populations, but there were very few people with S grade or above grade. However, Tuoba Qing had SSS grade, and no one had discovered it yet. S grade or above grade was quite important to the system main cities, and SSS grade was incredibly rare. It was impossible for the government not to take her away and nurture her. Moreover, whenever an S-grade person spawned in the origin, there would be a system announcement, such as a golden light. With Tuoba Qing's SSS grade, it was impossible for her to be in such dire straits. Could it be that there's some huge conspiracy behind this? Or was there a hidden secret? With Zhao Fu's cautious personality, he couldn't help but think in this direction because this matter didn't make sense. Wait a minute. Suddenly, Zhao Fu thought of Tuoba Qing. The reason why it had not been discovered yet was that Tuoba Qing had not come from the origin and had given birth through normal means. Even though there were dens and origin lands in the heaven-awakened world, indigenous residents could still marry and have children, which was something that players could not do. There were no system announcements for those who had given birth through normal means, and only the Lord would be able to find out their grade. It was very rare for someone with high grade to appear in a common district like this, and the Lord here didn't seem to care about this. Zhao Fu asked Tuoba Qing and found out that she had not been spawned from the origin. This made Zhao Fu feel quite relieved, and he couldn't help but feel quite delighted. This time, he had been completely lucky to obtain an SSS grade person. However, Zhao Fu still didn't know what kind of power she had. Her stats were not displayed, and there were only a few question marks next to her race. "Let's go," Zhao Fu said as he looked at the four people's tattered clothes. The four of them didn't say anything and silently followed behind Zhao Fu. Tuoba Qing wasn't as powerful as before, and her face was pale and weak. She couldn't even walk steadily, and Wu Qing supported her. Seeing that Tuoba Qing was so ill, it was difficult to imagine how she had been able to release such power. Seeing this, Zhao Fu threw a bottle of special effect healing pills to her and said, "Eat this. It's good for your body." Tuoba Qing stretched out her hand and caught the bottle. It wasn't just her. The other three people's attitudes toward Zhao Fu became gentler, and they weren't as sharp as before. This special effect healing pill was something that Zhao Fu had spent a lot of money to buy from a main city, and he had used many precious medicinal ingredients to make it. After Tuoba Qing consumed the pill, her face became slightly ruddy. Following this, Zhao Fu brought the four of them to a clothing store and said, "Choose a few clothes for yourselves." Because Tuoba Qing and the others were orphans, they could only survive with great difficulty. It was already quite good if they could eat their fill every day, and this was the first time they had come to such a place, so they were quite reserved. When Wu Ling and the others heard Zhao Fu's words, their eyes became filled with joy. They looked at the exquisite clothes around them, but in the end, their gazes fell on Tuoba Qing. After all, Tuoba Qing was their leader. Tuoba Qing weakly nodded, and the three of them happily ran over to the side to choose clothes. Seeing how happy her little brothers and sisters were, a trace of a smile appeared on Tuoba Qing's face. She turned to Zhao Fu and softly said, "Thank you." Hearing this, Zhao Fu turned to look at her and said calmly, "No need." At that moment, Wu Qing came over with a few clothes and said happily, "Big sis Qing, I've chosen quite a few clothes for you. I've chosen quite a few clothes. I've even helped you choose a few. Try them on." Tuoba Qing shook her head and lightly smiled as she said, "It's fine. I'll just choose a few." "Arg!" Wu Qing cried out in dissatisfaction. "Big sis Qing, don't. I've already helped you choose. Let's go in and try them on." In the end, Tuoba Qing was unable to refuse Wu Qing, and she dragged her into a changing room. Following this, the two of them appeared in front of Zhao Fu as if they had become two completely different people. Tuoba Qing had changed into a plain white dress, and with her pale and beautiful face and slim figure, she gave off the aura of a young lady. She was gentle, intelligent, and gentle to the point that anyone would want to protect her. Wu Qing had changed into a light green dress, and her aura became more elegant. Her childish face gave off a refreshing feeling, and Zhao Fu casually glanced at her chest, causing her to blush. After the four of them bought clothes, Zhao Fu took them out of the clothing store. When he was about to take them back to Qin Town, Li Zhongchang's stomach began to growl. Zhao Fu could only take them to a restaurant and let them have a good meal. Finally, he took them back to Qin Town. At this moment, the four of them finally found out about Zhao Fu's true identity and were also shocked. Zhao Fu first asked Li Si to arrange the accommodations for Wu Ling and the other two. He then brought Tuoba Qing to Zhang Baishu to see what illness she had. The healing pills that Zhao Fu had given her were mainly for treating injuries, but they couldn't cure all illnesses. Tuoba Qing's illness was quite strange, and Zhao Fu had asked her about it before. Every year, this illness would make her feel weak for a while, and sometimes she would feel like she was being burned by fire, which was quite painful. Chapter 142. After examining Tuoba Qing in detail, Zhang Baishu cupped his hands and said respectfully, "Your Majesty, I'm very sorry. It's not an illness. It's caused by this lady's special constitution." "Oh." Zhao Fu was surprised and continued to ask, "Then, can you tell what kind of physique she has?" Hearing this, Zhang Baishu shook his head and said, "Your Highness, this girl's physique is truly unique, and I can't accurately determine it, but I do know some of the causes and how to deal with it." Hearing Zhang Baishu's words, Zhao Fu felt slightly disappointed. He had thought that Zhang Baishu knew about this strange constitution. However, it was already quite good that Zhang Baishu had a way to deal with it. Following this, Zhao Fu asked what they should do. Zhang Baishu explained, "The reason why this lady is like this is because she goes through a transformation every year. This process requires a large amount of blood-refining spirit medicine, and without these medicines, this lady will fall into pain and weakness. As long as we can find blood-refining spirit medicine to help her complete the transformation, there won't be any problems." After hearing Zhang Baishu's explanation, Zhao Fu understood and asked what blood refinement spirit medicine was. Zhang Baishu replied that blood refinement spirit medicine referred to blood-type spirit medicines, such as blood ginseng, blood lingji mushroom, and blood knotweed. They could cause one's blood to go through great changes and refine. Now that he understood, Zhao Fu didn't have the blood-refining spirit medicine on hand, so he could only order people to go to the system cities to buy it. Lying on the sickbed, Tuoba Ching felt quite apologetic as she looked at Zhao Fu. She had not been of much help and had instead caused him so much trouble. She had heard Zhang Baishu's explanation of the blood refinement spirit medicine and felt that it would definitely be much more expensive than ordinary spirit medicines. Ordinary spirit medicines were already very expensive, let alone the special blood refinement spirit medicine. Moreover, they would need a lot more in the future, so it would be an astronomical figure. Tuoba Ching did not want to cause any trouble for Zhao Fu, and she did not want Zhao Fu to sacrifice so much for nothing. As such, she said weakly, "Your Majesty, I'm very sorry. I think it's better to forget it. I'll be fine after a while. You don't have to waste so many elixirs on me." Zhao Fu chuckled and gave him a comforting look. At this time, back in Qin Town, Zhao Fu did not wear a black cloak, which reduced the previous mysterious and cold feeling, but more warmth and distance. Zhao Fu said, "Don't worry. You don't have to worry about anything. These blood refinement spiritual herbs are nothing to me. Besides, since you've pledged your allegiance to me, I'll be responsible for you." Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Tuoba Ching felt incredibly moved. Even though Tuoba Ching seemed very mature, she was still a 17-year-old girl. Her heart was very weak, and she was not that strong. Growing up, she had endured many cruel and cold things, and this was not something someone her age should be enduring. At this moment, when she heard Zhao Fu's promise to her, her heart was really touched, and she sincerely acknowledged Zhao Fu. Seeing how teary her eyes were, Zhao Fu could not help but rub her head. He could see himself in her. After his mother had died, he had struggled to survive in this world by himself. Facing this intimate action, Tuoba Ching's face became slightly red, and she looked quite embarrassed. Zhao Fu suddenly realized that his actions had been quite rude, and he felt quite awkward as he took back his hand. He ordered people to buy some spirit medicines, and after doing as Zhang Baishu had said, he boiled them into a bowl of blood-red soup and fed it to Tuoba Ching. After Tuoba Ching drank the blood-red soup, her face quickly became ruddy, and she did not feel as much pain as before. It could be seen that Zhang Baishu's method was quite effective. Seeing this, Zhao Fu had Tuoba Ching lie down and rest for a while. Following this, Zhao Fu left the medicine center and went to the Black Forest horse den. Little Black and Little Gray were playing around, while Little White lazily lay by the side, watching the two beasts play around. Seeing Zhao Fu arrive, the three beasts were incredibly delighted. It had been quite some time since Zhao Fu had accompanied them. Zhao Fu comforted the three beasts that had run over and affectionately rubbed their heads against him. He then took out the horse Jade Soul and chose to use it. The horse Jade Soul gave off a jade-like light as it flew out of his hand and turned into a mighty horse. It neighed and leapt towards the horse statue in the air before fusing into it. At that moment, the Black Forest horse den started to change. Whether it was the horse statue floating in the air or the stone platform on the ground, they all started to give off a trace of jade, as if they were made of beautiful jade. At the same time, Zhao Fu found that the Black Forest horses, which had a base strength of stage 3 to 5, had become much stronger. Now, their base strength was around stage 5 to 7, which was quite a big change. If he had a few more horse Jade Souls, he would be able to raise the Black Forest horse's strength to stage 1. If a stage 1 war horse was paired with a stage 1 soldier, it would not be as simple as 1 plus 1. It would be more than enough to take on an ordinary stage 2 soldier, and it would be enough to crush ordinary cavalry. Zhao Fu was quite satisfied with the horse Jade Soul's effects, and he wondered how Lung Wu had obtained it. Following this, Zhao Fu planned to go to Red Plum Plains. Because he had encountered Tuoba Ching, Zhao Fu's original plans had been disrupted, and he had not yet settled the properties in the other two system main cities. As Zhao Fu took care of these matters, he turned his gaze to Bai Qi, who was exploring the outside world. At that moment, Bai Qi was leading 5,000 soldiers and 3,000 skeletons towards a certain place. The soldiers in charge of scouting had found an advanced village ahead of them. Now that Zhao Fu had handed over the military to Bai Qi, and Bai Qi had the ability to attack advanced villages, Zhao Fu did not have to personally attack advanced villages. After all, Bai Qi had taught Zhao Fu some of his battle tactics. Bai Qi stealthily advanced, and after a while, he arrived at his destination. This advanced village was different from the other villages. It was not a native village, nor was it an outlander village. This outlander village's appearance and attire were similar to that of an ethnic minority. They all had rough appearances and wore clothes that were quite different from the traditional clothes that most people wore. This was an advanced village of the Xianbei race. Chapter 143. These outlanders were all quite big and muscular, and they were all quite unruly and unruly. They were a stark contrast to the gentleness of the Central Plains Confucianism. The Xianbei people were no exception. Bai Qi, who was observing from aside, found a few strengths and weaknesses. They were slightly stronger than ordinary people, and they would be good soldiers on the battlefield. However, most people who revered strength were quite rash. Bai Qi could immediately tell that this advanced village had a few weaknesses. Not only were its defenses not strong, but its management was also quite chaotic. This Xianbei advanced village had roughly 9,000 or so people, and Bai Qi had 5,000 soldiers and 3,000 skeleton soldiers. With Bai Qi's strength, destroying this advanced village would be a piece of cake. The key was how to reduce their losses and obtain the greatest benefits. Of course, Bai Qi knew that their exploration team's main purpose, apart from discovering resources, was to steal people. As such, Bai Qi decided to follow Zhao Fu's plan. Zhao Fu's plan was quite simple. However, Bai Qi's plan was much simpler and faster than Zhao Fu's, and he had a plan in mind. In history, most outlanders were nomadic and did not plant crops. However, in the Heaven Awakened world, there were some changes. Even though they still had many livestock, they also planted some crops. This had a lot to do with the terrain. If it was a grassy plains, the Xianbei people would have been nomadic, but because this was a forest, it was impossible for them to raise large numbers of cattle and sheep. However, the Xianbei village still had a lot of livestock, roughly 2,000 or so cows for 1,000 or so deer, and Bai Qi wanted to make use of this. Bai Qi had brought 5 generals with him, and he gave them a series of orders. Now, they just had to wait for nightfall. Just like before, the Xianbei village did not do anything out of the ordinary. Time gradually passed, and soon the sun set. The golden light of the setting sun shined over the village, making people feel as if they were outside the Great Wall. The lord of this place was a boorish man, and he was the strongest. In a race that respected strength, as long as you were the strongest, you would definitely be the leader. Whether or not you had the ability to manage was secondary. His name was Lu Ruo. In the hearts of the residents, he was a very domineering and powerful man. Although he was cruel at times, such as chopping guards into pieces when they made a small mistake, he liked to use cruel methods to torture people. If people looked at him now, they would think that he was a cruel lord. However, many people still obeyed him, as this was a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Everything that the strong did was natural, and there were no moral restrictions. This was similar to outlanders like orcs and goblins. Before they knew it, it was already dinner time. The Xianbei people mainly ate meat as their main source of food, and other grains were used as supplementary food. Most of the Xianbei people would stew meat in large pots, and in order to not be discovered by the Xianbei people, Bai Qi's group couldn't light a fire, so they could only eat dry rations. Time continued to pass slowly. In the blink of an eye, it was midnight. When the night was dim, the plan began. The first to move were the 3,000 undead. Undead were called ghosts in the east, and no matter if it was in the west or in the east, animals were extremely sensitive to or afraid of undead. The Xianbei village's livestock area was to the north of the village, and as the undead approached, the cows and sheep within the fences started to become restless. As the undead came closer, The deathly aura became denser and denser, and the cows and sheep started to whine in fear and charge at the fences. At that moment, some people felt that something was off. Seeing a large number of undead appear to the north of the village, they immediately yelled, "Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Enemy attack!" Countless Xianbei people woke up from their dreams, but by now, the Ten Kings' undead cavalrymen had brought a large number of skeletons to the north of the village. Luckily, these were skeletons summoned by the king's undead cavalrymen, so most of their strength had been preserved. Ordinary skeletons would not have been able to move so quickly. The northern side of the Xianbei village was heavily guarded because they raised a large number of livestock, which was the main source of food for the Xianbei people. The Ten Kings' undead cavalrymen and 3,000 skeletons rushed over, and the Xianbei people could not understand why so many undead were attacking their village. However, the two sides quickly started a fight. The king's undead cavalrymen, who were riding on their skeleton horses, gave off immense power as they charged through the wooden fences. It was as if a hole had been torn open, and countless undead and skeletons flooded in. The Xianbei soldiers also arrived, and they quickly started a fight. At that moment, the Xianbei village's leader, Lu Ruo, woke up on his bed with a few naked women lying next to him. Lu Ruo savagely pushed them aside, and hearing the sounds of fighting in the north, he put on a set of clothes and walked out. At that moment, someone came to report, "Leader, there are roughly 3,000 undead attacking the north side of the village, and the situation is quite dire. These undead are much more powerful than ordinary undead." Hearing this, Lu Ruo frowned and looked quite furious, and he prepared to go and take a look. Roar! Suddenly, an ear-piercing cry sounded out, bringing with it the roar of death. This was from the king's undead cavalry, and after hearing this roar, the berserk livestock seemed to lose control and broke through the fences and started to run in all directions. Some madly charged into houses, while others charged at people. As the Xianbei village went berserk, the king's undead cavalrymen began to madly run around. These undead cavalrymen were the Xianbei village's future food, and they couldn't afford to lose them. Seeing this, Lu Ruo quickly yelled, "Hurry! Control these undead cavalrymen." The reason why the Xianbei village was in such chaos was because Bai Qi had chosen to attack the livestock area. Now, while the Xianbei people hurried to defend against the skeleton soldiers, they also had to send a large number of people to control the undead cavalrymen. Ordinary sheep and deer were easy to deal with, but berserk cows were not easy to deal with. Even if they didn't die, they would be heavily injured. Bai Qi's plan had only just begun. Soon, Doke and a few of his generals led 4,000 or so soldiers to attack from the east side of the Xianbei village. The Xianbei village was already in chaos, and they lacked manpower. Doke's attack was like a sharp knife stabbing into the Xianbei village, making it incredibly difficult for them to defend. After receiving this news, Lu Ruo could only order his people to ignore the undead cavalrymen and hurriedly lead his people to fight. Just as the two sides met and were about to fight, suddenly, a group of 800 fully armed cavalrymen charged from the west like a sharp spear, unstoppable and unstoppable, to the rear of Lu Ruo. Chapter 144. The cavalry's charge caused the Xianbei soldiers to be caught in a pincer attack. Adding on the chaos, morale, stats, and equipment, the Xianbei soldiers could not compare to Qin soldiers at all. Seeing the pitiful state of his village, Lu Ruo furiously chopped down a few soldiers charging at him. Lu Ruo was indeed quite powerful, and seeing this, Doke gripped his spear and prepared to rush up. Bai Qi was dressed in white clothes and had a blood-red sword at his waist. He rode on his tall, black forest horse and calmly watched the battle. Even though the Xianbei soldiers were brave and fierce, they were not a match for the Xianbei soldiers, and some of them even started to flee. Following this, Bai Qi's gaze fell on Lu Ruo. Just as Doke was about to rush up, Bai Qi said, "Doke, retreat." Bai Qi said, "By now, the outcome of the battle had been decided. In order to preserve the population, he had to end this battle as quickly as possible. So Bai Qi wanted to personally act. Bai Qi drew the seven murders sword from his waist and lightly galloped on his warhorse. The warhorse raised its hooves and charged forward like a black blur. Lu Ruo understood that Bai Qi was the main commander, and if he killed him, there was still a chance of turning the situation around. As such, he roared and raised his saber as he rushed at Bai Qi. However, he had overestimated himself and underestimated Bai Qi. Bai Qi had the seven murder swords buff and had stage 1 cultivation, so how could he be a match for him? As soon as they clashed, the outcome of the battle was already decided. A blood-red sword light flashed as a head flew into the air. Bai Qi brushed past Lu Ruo on his warhorse, but Lu Ruo had already died, unable to even take a single attack from Bai Qi. After Bai Qi killed Lu Ruo, the blood-red star in the sky gave off an even brighter blood-red light. Bai Qi arrived at the center of the battlefield and looked at the chaotic and bloody scenes around him. He slowly raised the seven murder sword and lightly shouted, "Soldier Aura Formation." Traces of blood-red light rose up from Qin's soldiers' bodies, and they gave off a metallic aura as they gathered towards Bai Qi. Scurry! Suddenly, a sound that could shatter rocks and pierce through gold shook the heavens and resounded in a radius of 10 miles. A giant blood-colored eagle appeared in the sky, spreading its wings and soaring in the sky. Its eyes were sharp and its claws were sharp. That enormous, icy cold, and murderous aura was like an avalanche, suppressing everything in its path. The Xinbei people had long since lost their will to fight after Lu Ruo's death, and under this terrifying aura, their hearts crumbled. They immediately threw down their weapons and knelt on the ground, choosing to surrender. Bai Qi was dressed in white and rode on his black forest horse as he stood at the center of the blood and corpses. The Xinbei people who were still alive were kneeling around him, and with the massive blood-red eagle circling above his head, Bai Qi looked as if he was a god descending from the heavens. From then on, the name of the white-robed general, which was feared by countless people in the future, gradually spread. With the surrender of the Xinbei people, the battle was quickly pacified. By now, Doak had finished compiling the data and reported, "General Bai, because the battle ended quickly, we quickly took control of the situation. Because the battle ended quickly, we quickly took control of the situation. We captured 7,356 Xinbei people in total. Most of the livestock escaped, but 20% of them remained, along with some weapons and 360,000 silver coins. Our losses weren't too great. 68 of them were lightly injured, 3 of them were heavily injured, and no one died. On the other hand, because the skeletons fought against the Xinbei's main force, they lost around 500 skeletons." Hearing Doak's report, Bai Qi nodded. His tactics were ferocious, simple, and quick, but the downside was that there were many casualties. However, because of their superior equipment, cultivation, stats, and tactics, the number of casualties was extremely low. Even though the skeletons had lost 500 skeletons, this wasn't a big deal. They were originally summoned from the king's undead cavalry's corpses, and they could use the Xinbei corpses to summon more skeletons. Bai Qi was quite satisfied with the results of this battle, and after the battle, he didn't hold back and gave some money to the soldiers. At the same time, he slaughtered cows and sheep for them to eat as a celebration. Following this, Bai Qi went to the barracks and found that there were 3 profession change stone steels. Xinbei soldier, E-grade military, description, soldiers of the Xinbei clan, effect, receives the basic cultivation technique, Xinbei saber technique. Xinbei archer, E-grade military, description, archers of a Xinbei clan, effect, receives the skill Xinbei archery technique. Xinbei shield bearer, E-grade military, description, shield bearers of the Xinbei clan, effect, receives the skill shield bearer. There was nothing special about these professions, but they were slightly weaker than Qin's basic professions. However, they were better than some of the legacy professions of some of the smaller families. Following this, Bai Qi went to the village hall. There was a silver cube floating in the air, which represented a silver Great City creation heart. Bai Qi placed his hand on it and was about to conquer it when he received a system announcement. Do you wish to conquer the lost race, Xianbei Village? System announcement. You belong to a Chinese clan and have unlocked the nation fate. By conquering this village, you will obtain many benefits. Your Qin's fate will fuse with this trace of Xianbei fate. The more Xianbei fate you fuse with, the more favorability the Xianbei clan will have towards you. They will no longer view you as enemies and may even submit to you. You will obtain a Xianbei tier, which can be used to create items or to summon people from the Xianbei clan. Bai Qi felt quite surprised that there were so many benefits to conquering a foreign clan's village. He immediately chose to conquer it and relocate. The basic structures of the Xianbei village disappeared, and all of the other structures collapsed. Finally, the light from the Rubik's Cube receded and slowly floated into Bai Qi's hand. Apart from this, a teardrop-shaped object fell from the sky. It was transparent like a teardrop. This was most likely the Xianbei tear. At the same time, Zhao Fu, who was busy opening a restaurant, received a system announcement. Congratulations, your subordinate Bai Qi has conquered the lost race, Xianbei Village. Your Qin's fate has fused with a trace of Xianbei fate. Congratulations, your subordinate Bai Qi has conquered an advanced village. Your king's ring has given you 400 achievement points. Congratulations, your subordinate Bai Qi has relocated an advanced village. Your king's ring has given you 41,000 EXP. Xianbei. Chapter 145. Conquering an advanced village had given so much EXP, and if there were a few more, Qintown would have long since leveled up. However, it was a pity that there were very few advanced villages, and finding one was already quite good. Most of them were basic villages, followed by intermediate villages, and then advanced villages. In terms of town-level towns, even if each area was as big as a province, the number of towns would definitely not exceed 160. After looking through all of the system announcements, Zhao Fu turned his attention back to the matter of opening a restaurant. Zhao Fu looked over at Bai Qi, who looked up at the teardrop falling from the sky. It was the Xianbei tear, and Bai Qi curiously stretched out his hand to catch it before examining it. Xianbei tear. The heavens took pity on a lost clan and allowed a clan that had disappeared to reappear in the heaven-awakened world. However, this was their last chance and their fate. Now that their village has been conquered, their fates have been decided. Xianbei tear. Xianbei village has been conquered, and their clan's fate has been fused with or devoured. This is the sorrow of a clan. Effects can be used to fuse items or summon people. 100 Xianbei tears can fuse into a gold grade item, which can summon an S grade Xianbei person. 1,000 Xianbei tears can fuse into a legendary grade item, which can summon an SS grade Xianbei person. 10,000 Xianbei tears can fuse into an epic grade item, which can summon an SSS grade Xianbei person. This is the limit, and can no longer be fused or summoned. After looking at the Xianbei tears information, Bai Qi put it into his spatial ring. He would give it to Zhao Fu when he returned. He felt that the Xianbei tier was not very useful, as it required conquering 100 Xianbei villages to fuse a gold-grade item or summon an S-grade Xianbei person. Evidently, the Xianbei tier's value was too low. Just conquering 100 Xianbei villages was worth tens of times more than the 100 Xianbei tiers. However, being able to fuse an epic-grade item or summon an SSS-grade Xianbei person was quite attractive. However, it required far too many Xianbei tiers, which was equivalent to conquering 10,000 Xianbei villages. This was simply too difficult, and it was simply impossible right now. As such, Bai Qi felt that this item would not be very useful, as it would be too difficult to complete. It would only be useful in later stages of the game. In actuality, the biggest harvest this time was the 7,000 or so people. Bai Qi had heard from Zhao Fu that the Qin Resistance Alliance was incredibly dangerous, especially the school of vertical and horizontal. As someone who had been in the same generation as the 100 schools of thought, Bai Qing naturally knew how terrifying this branch of the school of vertical and horizontal was. Now, that the vertical branch of the school of vertical and horizontal had shown hostility, he didn't know what the attitude of the horizontal branch was. Now, Qin had to develop several times faster in order to deal with future threats. After resting for a night, Bai Qi led the 7,000 or so captives back. With so many captives, they simply couldn't continue exploring. On the other side, Zhao Fu finished his work in Hongmei Plain and returned to Qin Town. Another day passed. The next day, Zhao Fu came to the medicine hall and saw that after a day of rest, Tuo Qing had completely recovered. Her complexion was ruddy, and she did not look weak at all. The blood-refining spirit medicine had been very effective on her. However, this was only temporary. If she lacked more spirit medicines, her body would become weaker again. However, she had Zhao Fu's support, so there was nothing to worry about. Currently, Tuo Qing was with Wu Ling and the others, and they were all happy that Tuo Qing had recovered. Seeing Zhao Fu come in, they all felt quite grateful, but also felt a bit awkward as they bowed to him. Now that they were in Qin Town, they had to learn this etiquette. At first, they were not used to it, so they felt quite awkward. Seeing the four of them, Zhao Fu lightly smiled and nodded as he said, "You four come with me." Of course, Tuo Qing and the others did not know why Zhao Fu was looking for them, so they could only follow behind Zhao Fu in confusion. They then used a teleportation channel to leave Qin Town and go to another place. Most of the guards here were rat folk, and it was the first time that Wu Ling and the others had seen so many rat folk, so they felt quite afraid. Even Tuo Qing felt quite nervous when she saw so many rat folk. After all, humans and outlanders were on opposing sides, so seeing so many rat folk would cause her to feel this way. However, seeing how respectful the rat folk were toward Zhao Fu, their fear gradually disappeared. Following this, the four of them followed Zhao Fu to a large hall. There was nothing in this hall. It was quite spacious. There was only a stone stele within. "You four, put your hands on it and see if you can change professions," Zhao Fu said. Hearing this, the four of them nodded and placed their hands on the stone stele, following which rays of light flashed around their bodies. Seeing this, Zhao Fu felt quite delighted. Zhao Fu's intention was to nurture Tuo Qing and the others into assassins, and he felt that they were quite suited for this profession. As such, he had brought them here to see if they could obtain the recognition of the assassin profession change stone stele. Since they could obtain the recognition of the assassin profession change stone stele, they indeed had the potential to become assassins. As for the next stage of the profession trial, which required them to kill underworld ghosts, Zhao Fu did not let them do it for now. After all, the four of them did not have any cultivation, and killing underworld ghosts would be too difficult for them. Zhao Fu did not let them do it for now, but he trusted in their abilities and potential, especially Tuo Qing. Following this, Zhao Fu took out the remaining 7 assassin equipment sets. These pieces of equipment were all equipment that could grow, and they would grow with their owner. With the Assassin Lord Ring, Zhao Fu would be able to use more power, so it would be better for these pieces of equipment to find owners as soon as possible. Zhao Fu did not hide anything, and he briefly explained the uses and functions of the assassin equipment sets. The four of them understood why Zhao Fu valued them, as well as how important the assassin equipment sets were. They felt incredibly grateful, but they also had different thoughts. For example, Wu Ling simply wanted to repay Zhao Fu after she became more powerful. Tuo Qing's heart felt incredibly warm, and she felt that she would never be able to repay Zhao Fu in this lifetime. However, Wu Qing also had a different thought. Could it be that His Highness was treating her so well because he had seen her naked body? On the other hand, Lu Zhongchang felt that he would do whatever Zhao Fu told him to. There was nothing he could do about it. Back then, Zhao Fu had left a huge shadow in his young heart. Chapter 146. Wu Ling chose the Nothingness equipment set, which gave her a type of nothingness power that made her immune to most attacks. She could also make her body disappear, allowing her to carry out secret assassination missions. Wu Qing chose the light equipment set, which gave her some light-type skills. It seemed that it was not appropriate for an assassin to have light-type skills, but it depended on how she used them. For example, she could use the refraction, reflection, and scattering of light to escape assassinations, as well as healing effects. Lu Zhongchang chose the terror equipment set, which was a mental-type legacy. However, it focused on the skills of fear, which could cause enemies to fall into a state of fear every day, making them unable to sleep at night. It would slowly torture them before killing them. Tuoba Qing, who Zhao Fu valued the most, chose the blood equipment set, which gave her a type of blood-type ability that allowed her to use blood to recover and kill. As long as she had blood, she would be in a semi-undying state, which was quite overpowered. Finally, out of the 12 assassin equipment sets, only the battle equipment set, kill equipment set, and battle equipment set remained. Just like the blood equipment set, they were quite powerful, so it would be quite difficult for them to find suitable owners. However, this was already quite good. The 9-piece assassin equipment set already had an owner. Tuoba Qing, who Zhao Fu valued quite a bit, had also chosen the powerful blood equipment set. Zhao Fu looked forward to her growth. After all, she was an SSS grade person just like Bai Qi, so she had incredible growth potential. Following this, Zhao Fu took the 4 of them back to the Qin town and had them get used to this power and raise their cultivations. When he had some spare S-grade orbs, Zhao Fu would help Wu Ling and the others prepare one. Following this, Bai Qi led the exploration team back to the Qin town. Bai Qi went to Zhao Fu's side and gave him a simple report about the Xinbei village. After hearing this, Zhao Fu felt quite delighted. After obtaining so many captives, the population of the Qin town was now a bit more than 46,000, and it was slowly catching up to the system main cities. At the same time, Bai Qi handed the Xinbei tear to Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu took the Xinbei tear and looked at it. He felt that it was not very useful, so he put it away in his spatial ring. At that moment, Li Si brought a Xinbei elder and a few beautiful Xinbei women into the room. Li Si first bowed before saying, "Your Majesty, they want to see you." Hearing this, Zhao Fu nodded and turned his gaze to the Xinbei old man and the beautiful girls. At that moment, the Xinbei elder and a few beautiful young women knelt down and spoke in a language that Zhao Fu could not understand. This was most likely the Xinbei language, but because they had already submitted, Zhao Fu was able to understand what they were saying. What they meant was, "Your Highness, we have completely submitted to you and will live under your glorious light. We are willing to serve you with our most beautiful women. Please accept us, Your Highness." After hearing their words, Zhao Fu understood the culture of the Outlander race. He knew that they would offer beautiful women to the person who conquered them because they lived in a world where the strong preyed on the weak. Their lives were quite wild, which was different from Chinese culture. Zhao Fu wanted to refuse because he already had a few female attendants by his side, and he was quite used to them. However, Zhao Fu's reaction caused the Xinbei elder's face to pale. If Zhao Fu did not accept, it would mean that the Xinbei people would not have good days in the future. Li Si understood what Zhao Fu was thinking and knew that Zhao Fu needed to get used to this. So he said, "Your Highness, you should accept them. It'll be good for the people's hearts." Hearing this, Zhao Fu thought for a moment before nodding and accepting the Xinbei women. The Xinbei elder smiled and left with Li Si. Following this, Zhao Fu and Bai Qi chatted for a while. Bai Qi continued to lead his soldiers to explore the outside world, while Zhao Fu planned to head to Battle City. After a few days, the restaurant and merchant alliance had officially opened. The restaurant's business was quite good, and it was roughly the same as the Westfall restaurant in Holy Light City. As soon as the restaurant opened, the various factions in Little Valley became wary. They all paid great attention to the restaurant that had suddenly appeared, and they sent people to ask about it, but they found nothing. They were incredibly envious of the restaurant's booming business, but it was a pity that their statuses weren't high enough, so they could only watch. However, as time passed, they quickly developed and it wouldn't be long before they could raise their statuses to barons. Now, there wasn't much time left for Zhao Fu, and the advantage of his status would gradually weaken. However, he couldn't rush things. Being able to open a path to the outer regions in 3 days was already quite good, and apart from Zhao Fu, no one else could do such a thing. Moreover, the biggest advantage in business was no longer the restaurant, but the merchant alliance. Recently, many people had seen many strange things on the streets that they had never seen before, and they definitely didn't exist in this region. This not only attracted the attention of countless indigenous residents, but it also attracted the attention of countless players. Now that the Merchant Alliance was a massive money-making machine, they began to sell all sorts of goods. As such, many similar scenes occurred. For example, when Zhao Fu sold the Black Forest fruits that he had planted in Little Valley, countless people came up to him and asked curiously, "Boss, what fruit is this? What fruit is this? How does it taste?" The person in charge of selling the Black Forest fruits replied, "This is a Black Forest fruit that can only be found in the Forest of Horrors. It can't be found anywhere else." Just this was enough to attract many people's attention. After all, they knew that the Forest of Horrors was in the neighboring region, and this was the first time they had seen something from the outer regions. Could it be that someone had crossed the border? Countless people continued to ask. The person selling the Black Forest fruits laughed and said that he was just selling the Black Forest fruits and didn't know anything about this. Seeing that he didn't know anything, no one continued to ask. Instead, they looked at the Black Forest fruits and said, "Boss, how much are these Black Forest fruits? I want to try them." The person selling the Black Forest fruits picked up 2 Black Forest fruits and handed them to the person, saying, 2 copper coins for one. It's the first time we're selling, so just 3 copper coins will do. What? Everyone was startled. Rare items were expensive, and ordinary items that were rare would seem precious. No one had expected Black Forest fruits from the outer regions to be sold so cheaply. They had thought that they would be worth at least 10 or so copper coins each. Zhao Fu didn't charge a very high price for these ordinary items, and he chose to sell them at a low profit. There were simply too many of these things, so he didn't have to worry about running out of stock. As long as they were sold, everything would be fine. Moreover, Zhao Fu had already made a lot of money. Chapter 147. This was only one of the many businesses under the Merchant Alliance's jurisdiction. Apart from the Merchant Alliance's many industries, there were also special foods, clothes, ordinary herbs, and all sorts of materials. The appearance of the restaurant made the various factions wary, but the appearance of the Merchant Alliance made them feel a great sense of danger. After all, the Merchant Alliance's benefits were simply too great, and not only did the various factions pay great attention to it, but even the system's governmental factions also paid great attention to it. Countless gazes fell on the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance, but the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance ignored these gazes and continued to make money in a low-profile manner. It did not show any danger and acted like a merchant, and it even gave the various factions some benefits. This made the various factions feel quite surprised and delighted. The Merchant Alliance's appearance was beneficial to them, and the relationship between the two sides was not as tense as before. They got along quite well, which was what Zhao Fu wanted. If one wanted to be a qualified merchant, they had to make themselves seem harmless and harmonious in order to do business well. However, the various factions all tried to guess who the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance belonged to. However, because they did not have any information, they were unable to make any accurate guesses. As such, they could only list the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance as a mysterious faction that could not be offended and had to be on good terms with. Zhao Fu was quite pleased with how the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance was operating. Now, the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance spanned across 4 regions: the Forest of Horrors, Little Valley, 100 Bamboo, and Red Plum Plains. In order to attract attention, Zhao Fu had set up the Misty Rain Merchant Alliance's headquarters in Little Valley, but in secret, it was set up in Qin Town. Currently, the profit from each region, including the restaurant, was slightly more than 7,000 gold coins. Although 7,000 gold coins didn't seem like a lot, if the 4 regions were added together, it would be 28,000 gold coins. If converted to copper coins, that would be 280 million, and if converted to real money, that would be 8 billion. This was just the total profit from a single day. As they developed more and more regions, their profits would become greater and greater. Now that they had so much money, Zhao Fu directly swept up energy stones from all of the system main cities and spent 10,000 gold coins to gather 1,000 energy stones. Regarding the spirit refining plan, Zhao Fu had always been thinking about it. Now that he had the spar, the plan could not be carried out because there were still a few important factors missing. Zhao Fu was not ready for the time being, and he had not found what he had been looking for. Therefore, even if he had the spar, the plan could not be carried out for the time being. Only after Zhao Fu found that thing could he really start. After checking on a merchant group situation, Zhao Fu went to Battle City and went to the arena to check on Gania. By now, Zhao Fu had discovered that Gania had become one of the most famous gladiators in Battle City. Anyone who hadn't heard of the Sword Demon by now definitely wasn't from Battle City. Every time he appeared, the arena would be filled to the brim. It was evident just how popular he was. The reason why these people liked Gania was because they liked the thrill of seeing him kill people of a higher cultivation. They were incredibly amazed by Gania's supreme sword skills, and they were also shocked by his talent. He had only cultivated for a few days, yet he had instantly jumped to stage 0 to 4. This speed was simply unimaginable. It wasn't just Battle City. Countless factions, and even the system's governmental factions, took a liking to him. They extended all sorts of olive branches and promised him all sorts of benefits, but they were all rejected by him. Countless people started to investigate everything they could about Gania, wanted to find out his true identity, where he came from, and what faction he belonged to. However, they were unable to find out anything. All they knew was that on a bright and sunny morning, he was brought to the arena by a mysterious black-cloaked figure, and his legend began. After 50 or so duels, no one had been able to force Gania to take off his cloak, nor had anyone seen what the Sword Demon looked like. This made Gania even more mysterious, and there was even a legend that no one knew what the Sword Demon looked like because everyone who had seen him had died. Zhao Fu could only smile and go to the big man in the arena. This was the big man that Zhao Fu had met when he had first come to the arena. By now, Zhao Fu knew that his name was Zheng Li, and Zhao Fu smiled as he said, "Brother Zheng, how have you been?" When Zheng Li heard this voice, he turned and saw that it was Zhao Fu. He was delighted, and he smiled as he said, "So it's Brother Zhao? Come, have a seat. It's Sword Demon's turn soon." Zheng Li gave Zhao Fu a VIP seat in the arena, and his attitude was extremely good. After all, to others, it seemed like he had discovered the genius Sword Demon, and because of Gania's shocking performance, his status in the arena had gradually risen. Only Deng Li knew that he was just lucky that he had managed this area. If it wasn't for Zhao Fu's insistence, he really wouldn't have discovered Gania's swordsmanship genius. Hearing this, Zhao Fu sat down, wanting to see how much Gania had changed over the past few days. Following this, Gania walked into the arena. He was still wearing his black cloak, but his aura was even more powerful and cold. As he walked into the arena, countless people started to excitedly yell his name, and the arena became incredibly lively. What surprised Zhao Fu was Gania's opponent. Gania's opponent was a big, boorish man who wore simple clothes made of beast hide and had a beard. From his appearance, it was possible to tell that he was a Xiongnu. Can these outsiders enter the system main cities? Or was this Han Nu captured? Zhao Fu felt quite confused. There had been many enmity between the Xiongnu people and Great Qin in history, and it could be said that they were very powerful enemies. As such, Zhao Fu felt quite confused about the appearance of an outsider in a system main city, and he only found out after asking Zheng Li. It turned out that in order to increase the number of people in the arena, Battle City Lord allowed these outsiders, and even some outlanders, to enter the system main cities. It was truly a different place with different policies. When comparing player factions to factions in the wilderness, player factions couldn't compare to factions in the wilderness. However, player factions had the support of system main cities, and they could increase their strength through all sorts of transactions. For example, they could buy good equipment, healing potions, and all sorts of support items. Now that this advantage was gone, most of the players in Little Abyss Valley were in dire straits. Zhao Fu turned his gaze back to the duel. The Xiongnu soldier looked at Gania and felt an indescribable sense of disgust. He raised his scimitar and ferociously attacked Gania. Gania understood that he was facing a Xiongnu soldier and did not hold back. The duel quickly concluded. After the Xiongnu died, Gania left amidst the cheers of the crowd. Zhao Fu saw that Gania had improved so quickly, so he decided to keep him here. After chatting with him for a bit, Zhao Fu returned to Qin village. Chapter 148. The method of opening the passageway was the same as before, and needless to say, the ground of East Green was covered in bright green moss. There were relatively few trees, but there were many streams here. Sometimes it was surrounded by clouds and mist, making it look like a fairyland. It was a very beautiful place. East Green had 4 system main cities: South Bright City, Heavenstone City, Nine Suns City, and Ruoxue City. Just like before, Zhao Fu walked around the system main cities and found that the specialty of this place was a type of clearwater fish. This fish lived in many of East Green's creeks, and it looked like a normal grass carp. However, it was slightly smaller, and its flesh was incredibly delicious and tender, making it very popular. After looking at these specialties, Zhao Fu went back to his main business, which was to buy real estate and open restaurants. After walking around the 4 system main cities, Zhao Fu found that there were fewer players in Heavenstone City than the other 3 system main cities, but he didn't know why. After buying the property, Zhao Fu hired people to renovate it and prepare for the business. After taking care of these things, Zhao Fu started to send out the intelligence department, Eternal Night, to all of the system main cities to gather information from all sides. The person who was the happiest about this was undoubtedly Lu Mei, as Zhao Fu had placed the most restrictions on her. Because Guo Binglin, Wang Ergu, and a few others were directly under the Eternal Night Intelligence Department, they could use teleportation channels as they pleased. However, Zhao Fu had restricted Lu Mei to only use teleportation channels, so every time she saw Zhao Fu, she would look quite unhappy. Now that Zhao Fu wasn't restricting her anymore, she could finally use teleportation channels as she pleased to go to the system main cities. She was incredibly happy. However, Zhao Fu had reminded her that if she couldn't complete her quests or got into trouble, she would be restricted again. Lu Mei immediately acted obedient and said a lot of good things about Zhao Fu. This caused Wang Ergu to blush with shame. Where did that domineering, barbaric, and fiery second-in-command go? When did you become even better at flattering people than me? The Eternal Night Society would set up a small branch in every system main city, and it would be made up of 10 or so people. In order to keep their identities hidden, Zhao Fu did not allow them to come into contact with Qin's faction. They were an independent organization, and right now, they were mainly gathering information and did not have any assassination missions. Next, Zhao Fu took out a map of the Heaven Awakened world and looked at it seriously. Now that the Forest of Horrors had been cleared in all 4 directions, it was time to prepare a plan and strategy for the future. Within Holy Light City, Jiang Feng walked into the cloth shop and looked at Jiang Ro, who was doing her accounts, and he said with a look of concern, "Little Ro, you're quite busy. Leave the accounting to someone else. You have enough things to do, so don't tire yourself out." Hearing this, Jiang Ro stopped and raised her head to look at Jiang Feng, slightly frowning. She knew that her big brother would not come to find her for no reason, and she knew that he was just pretending to care about her. As such, she calmly replied, "Big brother, it's fine. Why are you looking for me?" Seeing that Jiang Ro did not appreciate his kindness, Jiang Feng felt quite awkward, but he still said, "It's nothing much. I just wanted to ask how the clothing store's business is doing." "Not bad. The clothing store is quite famous now, and many higher-level factions in the system main cities are making clothes here. We make around 50 gold coins a day," Jiang Ro replied. Hearing this, Jiang Feng felt quite delighted and said, Lil Ro, you know that the relationship between the Jiang family and the Zhou family is quite strained. I don't need to go into detail about the reasons, but the Zhou family seems to have found a legatee. Right now, the Jiang family situation is quite dangerous, and I heard that Zhao Xian hasn't come to find you in a long time. I want to buy 500 sets of blue-grade equipment for the Jiang family's elites, so I'll leave this matter to Zhao Xian. Jiang Ro understood her big brother's intentions. He wanted to push her to Zhao Xian and rely on Zhao Xian's faction to resist the Zhou family. At the same time, it would be easier for her to meet Zhao Xian and obtain some benefits from him. 500 sets of blue-grade equipment were split into 2 pieces, 1 weapon and 1 armor. 500 sets of blue-grade equipment meant that there were 1,000 pieces of blue-grade equipment. Right now, an ordinary piece of blue-grade equipment was sold for 300 to 500 silver coins. 1,000 pieces of blue-grade equipment would cost at least 300,000 silver coins, which was the cheapest price the Jiang family could afford. As such, Jiang Ro wanted her to go to Zhao Xian. I'm not going, Jiang Ro said coldly after understanding Jiang Feng's intentions. She wasn't just angry at the Jiang family for pushing her to Zhao Fu like a tool, but she didn't want Zhao Fu to see her as such a woman. Facing Jiang Ro's refusal, Jiang Feng didn't panic, and he started to use the dangers of his family, his parents, and his Zhou family to persuade her. In the end, Jiang Ro agreed. After hearing Jiang Ro agree, Jiang Feng smiled and turned to leave. Jiang Ro lowered her head and stealthily wiped away the tears at the corners of her eyes. Jiang Ro, what is it? Zhao Fu lightly smiled and asked Jiang Ro, who was sitting next to him. Zhao Xian, I want to buy some equipment here. Jiang Ro felt as if she couldn't say it out loud, and she paused for a while, looking quite conflicted. Hearing this, Zhao Fu smiled and nodded as he said, Sure. How many do you want? Hearing Zhao Fu's words, Jiang Ro looked up at Zhao Fu and deeply breathed in as she said, I want 500 sets of blue-grade equipment. Can you give me a discount? Huh. Zhao Fu couldn't help but laugh when he saw how embarrassed and nervous Jiang Ro looked. So that was what she had come for. So he replied, Sure, I'll give you a 40% discount. Jiang Ro let out a sigh of relief and felt incredibly grateful, but also a bit ashamed. Zhao Xian had treated her so well, yet she had shamelessly come to him to take advantage of him. Her beautiful eyes became a bit moist. Seeing Jiang Ro like this, Zhao Fu asked caringly, What is it? Jiang Ro held back her tears and shook her head, indicating that she was fine. Zhao Fu felt that there was something going on with Jiang Ro, but it wasn't appropriate for him to ask. At that moment, the soldiers reported that there was something for him to take care of, so Zhao Fu could only apologize to Jiang Ro. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly said, Thank you so much. Just as he was about to leave, Jiang Ro suddenly said as she lowered her head. Hearing this, Zhao Fu stopped and said, No need. Are we friends? If you need anything, I'll do my best to help you. You don't owe me anything, and perhaps I'll need your help in the future. Hearing this, Jiang Ro felt the knot in her heart untie. When she grew up, she hoped that she would be able to help Zhao Fu one day. She raised her head and smiled at Zhao Fu. Chapter 149. After taking care of Jiang Ro's matters, Zhao Fu returned to Qin Town and continued to take care of his unfinished business. At the same time, Zhao Fu decided where he wanted to explore in Qin Town, which was the north. After all, Qin Town's main plan was to leave China and use Vietnam as a stepping stone. Even though Vietnam was a small country, it was still a country. If Zhao Fu wanted to steal it, he would have to make preparations first. He would first open up a path to Vietnam before expanding in other directions. East Green's 4 restaurants had long since opened, and there was no need for Zhao Fu to personally take care of these matters. Now, there's a piece of good news, which is that we've found a skeleton general in an underground passage. This skeleton general was still quite powerful, but Zhao Fu's soldiers were not as weak as before. Li Wen combined the 2 exploration teams, and after paying the price of a few light injuries, They successfully killed the skeleton general. The skeleton general dropped 5 items. One was the skeleton general's armor, which Zhao Fu gave to Li Wen. Next was the skeleton general's sword, which was called the Flowing Cloud Sword. Its stats were the same as Bai Qi's Star Slashing Sword, and Zhao Fu gave this sword to Wang Jian. One of the next 2 items was a general's soul. Now that he knew what a general armament stats were, Zhao Fu couldn't bear to use it to strengthen it. He decided to save it for when he had 10 general souls and fuse them into a general armament. The other item was an undead general profession change stone, which Zhao Fu had given to a rat folk called Canage. Now, Zhao Fu had 11 generals. The 5th item was quite interesting. It was a jade flute that was white and cold. Because it had been contaminated by the undead aura for a long time, the aura it gave off was quite strange, and it felt like an inauspicious item. Death Cry Flute, a strange flute. No matter what song it plays, it will give off a sorrowful feeling, causing people to cry. The person who plays the flute will be targeted by ghosts. This was the 5th item, and it could be said to be an inauspicious item. If it was placed in the real world, it would terrify a group of people. After all, those who used the flute would be targeted by ghosts, and just thinking about it made people's hair stand on end. However, this was the heaven-awakened world, and with Zhao Fu's current strength, he did not fear any ghosts. As such, he lightly blew into the jade flute. Ooh! As soon as the sound of the flute was heard, Zhao Fu felt a chill on the back of his neck, as if a cold wind had blown past. Zhao Fu raised his head, and the scene suddenly became quiet. It started to feel strange. Suddenly, a few faint phantoms slowly appeared. These phantoms consisted of both men and women. Their appearances were very blurry, and their appearances could not be seen clearly. Their clothes were also very ordinary. Their feet were a few inches off the ground, as if they were floating. Zhao Fu looked at these phantoms and found that they were just a group of ghosts. These ghosts were all quite weak, and a casual blow would be able to cause them to dissipate. Right now, they did not even dare to get within 10 meters of Zhao Fu. This was because the amount of fate that Zhao Fu had was enough to cause them to dissipate, and they had all been attracted by the flute. Zhao Fu had never expected this. This flute was indeed quite strange. Zhao Fu had only played a single note, yet it had attracted these ghosts. If he played another song, who knew what kind of ghost would be attracted? The Death Cry flute's abilities were quite powerful, and Zhao Fu put it into his king's ring. He then looked at the ghosts around him and waved his hand, causing a formless energy to blow out like a gentle breeze, causing the ghosts to immediately turn into traces of smoke. In the following period of time, Zhao Fu saw that most of the matters had been taken care of, so he returned to his room and prepared to cultivate. He had quickly raised his cultivation to stage 1, but not too long after, he was interrupted. Guo Binglin knelt on the ground with a serious expression and said a few words, causing Zhao Fu's gaze to become cold. He put on his black cloak and immediately left the room, bringing Guo Binglin to Heavenstone City through a teleportation channel. At that moment, there were many people gathered in front of the restaurant talking about it. Some sighed, while others rejoiced in others' misfortune. This was the restaurant that Zhao Fu had opened. Zhao Fu walked into the restaurant and saw that the ground was a complete mess. All of the tables and chairs had been smashed, and what infuriated him the most were the 20 or so corpses on the ground. There were waiters, shopkeepers, and chefs among these corpses. In any case, not a single person from the restaurant had been left alive. They had all been killed. There was blood on the ground and walls, and their corpses lay there in different postures. Their expressions of terror were still on their faces, and Zhao Fu recognized all of these faces. However, they had all died just like that. Zhao Fu felt quite furious, and his gaze became cold as he tightly clenched his fists and asked, "What's going on?" Beside him, Guo Binglin could sense Zhao Fu's anger, and his heart trembled. He cupped his hands and started to earnestly explain, "Your Majesty, this is what happened." Not long after the restaurant opened for business, the slightly drunk Heavenstone City's young lord came to the restaurant with a few servants and said that he had booked the entire restaurant. He told the shopkeeper to chase everyone out. The shopkeeper had to take into consideration his status, so he could only apologize to the other customers and ask them to leave. The young lord then told the shopkeeper to make all of the dishes and serve them, and the shopkeeper did as he was told. The shopkeeper had to carefully deal with the young lord. However, the young lord said that he wasn't used to the wine here, so the shopkeeper could only go to another restaurant and spend a lot of money to buy the wine that the young lord liked. However, after being drunk, the young lord made things even more difficult for him, and he ordered the young women here to serve him. The shopkeeper could do nothing about this, as he had only hired these young women to serve him. As such, the shopkeeper could only brace himself and explain. However, the young lord completely ignored him and tried to use force. The young women were unwilling, and they injured him in the process. Following this, the young master became furious and ordered his people to kill everyone in the restaurant. He also destroyed the restaurant. Now, the young master was drunk and unconscious. He was carried back to the city lord's mansion by his servants. Zhao Fu now understood why there were so few players in Heavenstone City. With such a domineering, violent, unreasonable, and bloodthirsty scum, who would want to stay here? It had taken so much effort to develop this faction, and if he was displeased, it could be destroyed. A wave of fury welled up in Zhao Fu's heart, but Zhao Fu's mind was still quite clear. He immediately thought of something and coldly said, "Everyone from Qin Town is to leave Heavenstone City." Hearing this, Guo Binglin immediately complied, turned around, and quickly left. At the same time, he passed down the order. Soon, all of Qin Town's people in Heavenstone City left Heavenstone City and returned to Qin Town. Not too long after Zhao Fu's people left, soldiers came with murderous auras to seal up these places, and all of the properties that Zhao Fu had bought were forcefully taken back. If it wasn't for the fact that Zhao Fu had given the order so quickly, everyone in Heavenstone City who had anything to do with Great Qin would have been killed. System announcement. You have been listed as a wanted criminal by Heavenstone City. System announcement. You are currently in Heavenstone City, and your location has been exposed. Please leave immediately. Chapter 150. However, even though he was furious, Zhao Fu knew that he couldn't stay here for too long. He was now a wanted criminal, so he couldn't use Heavenstone City's teleportation channels. As such, Zhao Fu could only quickly walk towards the city gates. However, very soon, he was spotted by a team of 10 patrolling soldiers. Facing these patrolling soldiers, Zhao Fu's expression didn't change at all as he walked into an alleyway. These soldiers thought that Zhao Fu's cultivation was only at stage 1, so they were quite confident that even a single soldier would be able to easily take him down. As such, they didn't notify anyone else and followed Zhao Fu into the alleyway. At that moment, Zhao Fu stopped walking and turned to look at the soldiers walking in. A cold smile appeared on his face. "Li Wu, you're now a wanted criminal in Heavenstone City, so you won't be able to escape. If you surrender now, you'll die with an intact corpse. You can only blame yourself for offending our young master," one of the squad leaders said to Zhao Fu in a mocking tone. Li Wu was a random name that Zhao Fu had given to buy property. Zhao Fu knew that he had a lot of authority in a main city, and he had expected such a scene. As such, in order to hide his identity, Zhao Fu normally didn't use his real name to buy property. Hearing their words, Zhao Fu's gaze became incredibly cold. His own people had treated him with respect and had tried to make concessions, but they had been killed by their young master. Now, they were blaming him. Zhao Fu didn't reply and directly attacked. Right now, he only wanted to kill. Traces of Black King's power appeared around his body as he leaned forwards and tapped off the ground, shooting out like an arrow. So fast. The soldiers were completely shocked, and before they could even react, Zhao Fu had already appeared in front of them. His palm was stretched out, and a black light shined out of it as his hand became a saber. Pooh! The scene froze as Zhao Fu's palm pierced through a soldier's chest. Blood leaked out of the soldier's mouth, and he looked incredibly shocked. He had never thought that he would die so easily. In the next second, Zhao Fu's body once again disappeared. Bang! Bang! Two muffled sounds rang out, and the two soldiers flew out, crashing into the walls on both sides. Their chests had caved in, and it seemed like they would not be able to survive. The remaining soldiers all felt a wave of terror, and only now did they understand that they were the prey. "Let's go. Report this to the Lord." When the squad leader saw that 3 soldiers had died in an instant, he understood that they were no match for Zhao Fu and immediately gave the order to retreat. At the same time, the soldiers were dumbfounded. When had these players become so powerful? Normally, they relied on their strength to look down on players. Now, however, they had kicked an iron plate. They wanted to leave, but Zhao Fu didn't want to let them go. All the suppressed anger in his heart exploded, and he saw Zhao Fu shuttling back and forth among the soldiers like a black shadow. Bang! Zhao Fu punched a soldier in the chest, causing his chest to cave in and his body to fly backwards. Fu, with a wave of his hand, a soldier's head was directly chopped off by Zhao Fu, causing blood to spurt out from his neck. This was a complete massacre. Perhaps these soldiers, with their Stage 1 cultivation, could act like a tyrant in front of normal players, and there were existences that they could only look up to. However, Zhao Fu had all sorts of stat bonuses from his equipment and all sorts of high-tier buffs, so he didn't have to fear these Stage 1 soldiers. Zhao Fu shuttled back and forth a few times, and soon, only one soldier was left alive. The others lay on the ground in various postures, and their deaths were quite pitiful. Their blood dyed the alley red. The soldier gripped his sword with both hands, and his body trembled as he stared at Zhao Fu. He knew that he couldn't escape, so he could only fight with his life on the line. Instantly, Zhao Fu disappeared from his eyes, and the soldier screamed in terror as he ferociously slashed forwards with his sword. However, a black shadow dodged his sword and suddenly appeared in front of him. In that instant, a hand grabbed his head and lifted him up. Bang! Without any hesitation, Zhao Fu clenched his fist, and the soldier's head exploded like a watermelon. Blood-red brain matter splattered everywhere. At this time, Zhao Fu stood in place, his hands covered in blood. This was the first time that Zhao Fu felt that killing was such a carefree thing. This also began to change Zhao Fu's personality. Of course, Zhao Fu knew that he couldn't stay here any longer, so he quickly left and headed for the city gate. Not long after, a valiant-looking middle-aged man led a large group of soldiers to the alleyway. Seeing this bloody scene, the middle-aged man felt infuriated. This middle-aged man was called Yu Linping, and he was one of Heavenstone City's 3 great generals. Before, he didn't care too much about this matter. After all, his hedonistic young master had offended a weak player, and in order not cause any trouble for Heavenstone City, he would kill anyone he offended. Yu Linping had thought that such a weak player would be easily dealt with, just like before. However, he had never thought that he would receive news of his soldiers being killed. As such, he immediately rushed over with his soldiers, and when he saw the scene in front of him, he realized that things weren't as simple as they seemed. His Stage 1 soldiers hadn't been able to resist at all, and they had been killed one by one. His young master might have offended someone he shouldn't have. The city lord can't spoil him too much. Also, the Qin family's methods are too vile, and they keep fanning the flames. If this goes on, Heavenstone City might be destroyed. However, there was no turning back now. Yu Linping suppressed the fury in his heart and turned as he said, "Immediately list Li Wu as an S-grade fugitive." Hearing his words, the soldiers beside him felt quite confused. They knew that all of the system main cities' grade fugitives were the greatest threats to the system main cities, and yet a weak player in their eyes was listed as an S-grade fugitive. They couldn't believe this and asked, "Sir, what's wrong? Are you sure?" Yu Linping earnestly nodded and said, "For him to be able to kill my soldiers so easily, his strength isn't inferior to mine. Report this matter to the city lord and give the order to close the city gates. We can't let him escape, or else there will be endless trouble in the future." The soldiers obeyed and turned to leave, and Yu Limping led his soldiers in the direction that Zhao Fu had left in. By now, Zhao Fu had arrived at Heavenstone City's southern gate, and he blended into the bustling crowd. He lowered his body and hid his aura so that he wouldn't attract too much attention. When Zhao Fu was still 10 or so meters away from the city gates, the city guards drew their large sabers and yelled, "Close the city gates, so no one is allowed to enter or leave." Chapter 151. The sudden closing of the city gates caused many people to feel quite displeased. They had wanted to go out and hunt for money or sell the items they had obtained outside. Even though there weren't many player factions in Heavenstone City, there were still many independent players. Apart from players, there were also indigenous residents who went in and out to do business. Now that the city gates were closed, everything had to stop. The city gates had been closed too suddenly, and there had been no warning at all. As such, many of the people who were blocked at the gates looked quite displeased, and they either yelled in protest or tried to negotiate. "Can't you let one last group of people leave or come in?" The general coldly harumphed. He had received a death order, so of course he couldn't let anyone go. He yelled, "Close the city gates. Anyone who dares to enter will die." This order, which was filled with killing intent, forced countless people to retreat. Even though they were quite displeased, there was nothing they could do. Compared to their lives were definitely more important. At the same time, they felt quite confused. Just what was going on in Heavenstone City for them to suddenly close the city gates? This was the first time something like this had happened before. The people blocking the city gates retreated, and the soldiers pushed open the 10 or so meter tall gates, which were made from silver gray materials. Soon, the gates were about to close. Zhao Fu, who was hidden within the crowd, knew that if he didn't act now, he wouldn't have another chance. He circulated his king's power, and a large amount of Black King's power flowed out of Zhao Fu's body and spread out like a fog. Shing! A clear sword hum sounded out as Zhao Fu drew the Sky Demon sword and raised it high, sending all of his king's power into it. Sensing Zhao Fu's power, the sleeping Sky Demon within the sword suddenly opened its cold, blood-red eyes, and a large amount of Sky Demon chi flowed out of the sword. The Sky Demon sword gave off a demonic, soul-devouring light, and Zhao Fu lightly yelled, "Sky Demon slash!" Boom! An explosion sounded out as Zhao Fu slashed down with his sword, sounding like a demon's roar. The air seemed to be split in half as a massive black sword light flew out. The 10 or so soldiers who were closing the gates, as well as the 20 or so soldiers who were standing guard, were caught off guard and struck by the sword light. The massive and terrifying sword light devoured their bodies, and after the sword light passed, the ground was dyed red with blood. Countless corpses littered the ground, and a pungent smell of blood spread out. At the same time, a sword mark that was over 20 meters long appeared on the ground, and strands of demonic chi emerged from it. The sudden change startled countless people, and they all turned to look at the black-cloaked man beside them, who looked like a demon god. In front of everyone's astonishment, Zhao Fu turned into a beam of black light and leaped towards the city gate. Just as Zhao Fu was about to rush out of the city gate, suddenly, a valiant figure jumped down from the city wall, blocking Zhao Fu's path. It was the city gate general. His cultivation had already reached the second order. Scram! Zhao Fu coldly roared as he slashed out with his sword, and the Sky Demon sword gave off a domineering aura of killing as it slashed towards the Guardian General. This sword was extremely ferocious, and the defending general immediately used his large saber to block Zhao Fu's sword. However, he had underestimated Zhao Fu. Bang! The defending general fell as if a massive beast had slammed into him, and his body slid back 10 or so meters before coming to a stop. He looked at Zhao Fu in shock, and Zhao Fu didn't bother with him and rushed out of the city gate. Swish, swish, swish! Just as Zhao Fu stepped out of the city gate, the archers on the city wall shot out arrows that tore through the air, forming a rain of arrows that were incredibly sharp. Luckily, there were at most 4,000 city guards on one side of the city wall, and most of the soldiers were still within the city. Of the 4,000 or so city guards, there were only 1,000 or so archers, and as they shot out arrows, Zhao Fu unleashed his protective barrier as he quickly dodged. Very quickly, Zhao Fu dodged this wave of arrows, and the other close combat soldiers could only try to get down from the city wall. They weren't as strong as the defending general, and they couldn't jump down from the city wall that was dozens of meters tall. At that moment, the defending general raised his large saber and rushed over. A cold light flashed in Zhao Fu's eyes as he raised the Sky Demon sword and used Sky Demon Soul Devouring. A massive demon image flew out of the sword and spread its wings as it flew towards the defending general. Seeing this, the defending general was quite startled and hurriedly used a defensive skill. He held his large saber in front of him, and a blue crescent moon appeared in front of him, giving off a faint blue light that protected his body. The Sky Demon image flashed past his body, and the blue crescent moon gave off a blue light that protected the defending general's body. In the end, the Sky Demon image wasn't able to absorb any of his essence and dissipated, and the blue crescent moon slowly disappeared. Suddenly, the defending general coughed up a mouthful of blood and half knelt on the ground, looking heavily injured. It seemed that even though the Sky Demon Soul Devouring hadn't absorbed any of his essence, it was still able to heavily injure him. Zhao Fu didn't continue to attack, and he turned and rushed in another direction. Right now, he only had one goal, which was to preserve his own life. The defending general reluctantly watched Zhao Fu run away. Everything that had happened seemed very slow, but in actuality, it had happened in an instant. Before his soldiers could even come down from the city wall, the defending general suddenly had an idea and yelled, "He's the S-grade fugitive, Li Wu. Whether he's dead or alive, anyone who kills him will receive 100,000 gold coins." What? 100,000 gold coins? Countless people inside and outside the city were given a big fright by this figure. They hadn't looked at the quest Stone Steel yet, so they didn't know that Heavenstone City had put a bounty on Zhao Fu's head. However, that wasn't important anymore, as they were completely attracted by the 100,000 gold coins. 100,000 gold coins was equivalent to 1 billion copper coins, which was equivalent to $10 billion in the real world. This shocking figure caused countless people's eyes to shine with greed, and their expressions became savage and terrifying. If they could kill Zhao Fu, they would have everything they wanted. They knew how powerful Zhao Fu was, but looking at the massive crowd around them, it seemed that they could rely on numbers to kill him. If someone was lucky enough to kill him, they would have enough money for the rest of their lives. Countless people didn't hesitate and madly rushed towards Zhao Fu. Zhao Fu's gaze was cold and filled with killing intent as he looked at the people rushing towards him and said, "Since you all want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." Zhao Fu didn't even fear Stage 1 soldiers, so why would he fear these small fries who were at most Stage 0 to 5? He gripped the Sky Demon sword and shot into the crowd like a black ray of light. The massacre had officially begun. Terrifying black sword lights slashed out, and pained cries continuously sounded out. As Zhao Fu rushed into the crowd of people, he felt as if he was rushing into a group of people who didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. Because of how crowded it was and how weak they were, not a single one of them was able to hit him. Zhao Fu also started to go on a killing spree. Every time he slashed out, he would definitely dismember 10 or so people. The ground was completely dyed red with blood, and the stench of blood was incredibly pungent. Zhao Fu's black cloak was also dyed red with blood. Haha, that you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.